The divorce papers arrived on Maya Chen's 32nd birthday, delivered by a process server who apologized 3 times before handing over the envelope that would dismantle her life. She stood in the doorway of the apartment she could no longer afford, still wearing the coffee-stained uniform from her morning shift at Ridge Valley Diner, and felt the weight of official stamping and legal terminology reduce 8 years of marriage to a transaction with terms and conditions. Inside, her daughter Lily practiced violin in the bedroom they now shared, the one-bedroom apartment forcing intimacy that poverty demanded. The sound of scales, imperfect but determined, drifted through walls thin enough to hear neighbors arguing and babies crying and lives unfolding in parallel struggles. Maya closed the door, leaned against it, and read words that confirmed what she'd known for 6 months but hadn't wanted to believe. Marcus Chun was divorcing her for irreconcilable differences, which translated in plain language, too. He'd fallen in love with Jennifer Hastings, his business partner at Chun and Hastings Biotech Solutions, and Maya's continued existence as his wife had become inconvenient. The company they'd built together, the one Maya had funded with her inheritance from her parents, the one she'd worked 80-hour weeks to launch while Marcus finished his PhD, now belonged entirely to him according to the prenuptial agreement his lawyer father had insisted upon. Maya had signed it at 24, naive and in love, believing marriage meant partnership and trust. The prenup specified that any business started during the marriage using premarital assets would remain the separate property of the founding spouse. Marcus had structured everything carefully, using Maya's inheritance as a loan with repayment terms that bankruptcy had voided, leaving her with nothing but debt from a company that was now worth $40 million. The apartment in Seattle's Rainier Valley neighborhood cost $1,400 monthly, which consumed most of her diner wages. Lily's violin lessons, the one luxury Maya refused to sacrifice, took another $200. Food, utilities, transportation, the endless small expenses that accumulated like interest on borrowed time, left her with negative $300 most months, a deficit she covered by selling belongings and accepting overtime shifts that meant Lily spent evenings alone. The letter from Marcus's attorney outlined child support, $400 monthly, the minimum required by Washington state law for his declared income bracket. He'd restructured his compensation to minimize salary and maximize stock options that wouldn't mature for years, legally reducing his obligation while maintaining his lifestyle. The mansion in Medina, the Tesla, the vacation home in Whistler, all untouchable because they belonged to the corporation or were purchased after separation. Maya had consulted 3 attorneys, all of whom delivered the same message with varying degrees of sympathy. The prenup was ironclad. Washington was a no-fault state, and judges didn't care about moral culpability or betrayal, only legal documentation and asset classification. She could fight, spend years in litigation she couldn't afford, and likely lose everything, including time with Lily. Or she could accept the terms, take the minimal support, and rebuild from nothing. Lily emerged from the bedroom, violin under her chin, face bright with the kind of hope that hadn't yet learned the world's cruelty. "Mom, I think I almost got the Vivaldi passage. Want to hear?" Maya forced a smile that felt like lying. "Always, sweetheart." The music filled their small space with beauty that transcended circumstances, notes climbing and falling with emotion Lily was just beginning to understand. At 11, she knew her parents had separated, knew money was tight, knew they'd moved from a house with a yard to an apartment where the elevator rarely worked. But she didn't yet understand betrayal's full dimensions, how trust could be weaponized, how love could be revealed as transaction. That ignorance was a gift Maya intended to preserve as long as possible. The second envelope arrived 3 days later, this one from an attorney in Fairbanks, Alaska. Maya almost discarded it, assuming it was another credit card lawsuit or collection notice, but something about the Alaska return address stopped her. She had no connection to Alaska, no reason for correspondence from a state she'd never visited. Inside, a letter from Morrison and Sato, attorneys at law, explaining that Evelyn Reeves, Maya's maternal grandmother, had died at 89 and left Maya her sole remaining asset, a defunct amber mine in the interior Alaska wilderness called Reeves Amber Claim. The letter included a property deed, mineral rights documentation, and a personal note in handwriting Maya vaguely remembered from childhood birthday cards. The note was brief, written in shaky cursive that suggested effort near the end. Maya, your mother and I had a falling out before you were born. I never got to know you, and that's my greatest regret. This mine was my husband's dream, abandoned when amber prices collapsed. It's worth nothing, but it's yours. Maybe someday it will mean something. I'm sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry for so much. Evelyn. Maya tried to remember Evelyn Reeves, pulling up fragments of memory from early childhood before her mother had cut off all contact. A tall woman with silver hair, a house that smelled like pine and old books, stories about Alaska that seemed impossible to a California girl. Then nothing, a relationship severed for reasons her mother never explained, and Maya eventually stopped asking about. The property documentation revealed a claim filed in 1987, a 40-acre parcel near a town called Coldfoot, structures listed as mine entrance, equipment shed, cabin, dilapidated, and mineral rights specific to amber deposits. The assessed value for tax purposes, $1. $1. Less than the coffee Maya bought on her break. She researched amber mining that evening while Lily slept, learning that Alaska had once produced significant amber deposits, that the industry had boomed in the 1980s when jewelry demand peaked, then collapsed when synthetic alternatives and Baltic imports flooded the market. Abandoned mines dotted the interior, their owners having given up when extraction costs exceeded amber's market value. The thought of owning anything, even a worthless hole in the Alaskan wilderness, felt surreal after losing everything to Marcus and his attorneys. Maya called the Alaska Law Office the next morning, speaking to Sarah Morrison, who'd sent the letter. Ms. Chen, I'll be frank. Your grandmother's estate has no other assets. The mine hasn't been operational since 1989. The structures are likely collapsed or severely deteriorated. There's no road access, only by aircraft or winter trail. Taxes are current because they're minimal for abandoned mining claims, but there's no value here. If you want to disclaim the inheritance, I can process that paperwork. What happens if I disclaim it? The state takes it for unpaid taxes eventually, or it sits abandoned until someone files a new claim. Realistically, no one will. Amber mining isn't economically viable in that region anymore. Maya thought about her $800 bank account, her $1,400 rent, her daughter who deserved better than a mother working double shifts and still falling behind. What if I wanted to sell it? Sarah's pause spoke volumes. Ms. Chun, I've been practicing law in Alaska for 30 years. That property is unsellable. No one wants a defunct mine with no access and no viable deposits. I'm sorry to be blunt, but you'd be lucky to give it away. So my options are, keep a worthless mine or abandon it. Essentially, yes. Maya accepted the inheritance that afternoon, signing documents that made her the owner of 40 acres she'd never seen in a mining operation that had failed before she was born. The decision felt less like choice and more like refusal to reject the only thing her grandmother had left her, even if that thing was worth $1 and represented nothing but another dead end. The mockery began at the diner when she mentioned the inheritance to Carla, her shift supervisor and the closest thing to a friend she'd made since the separation. Carla had been sympathetic about the divorce, had covered shifts when Lily was sick, had slipped Maya extra tips when money was desperately tight. But when Maya mentioned inheriting an amber mine in Alaska, Carla's expression shifted from sympathy to something closer to pity mixed with amusement. An amber mine? Like the stuff they make jewelry from? Yeah, my grandmother owned it. It's been abandoned since the 80s. So what's it worth? $1. Literally. That's the tax assessment. Carla's laugh came before she could stop it, genuine but cutting. Oh, honey, I'm sorry. I thought you meant like a valuable inheritance, not a hole in the ground in Alaska. She paused, trying to recover kindness. But hey, at least it's something, right? The story spread through the diner staff with the velocity of gossip in enclosed spaces. By her next shift, 3 different co-workers had made jokes about her gold mine, their air quotes visible even when they weren't making the gesture. Tom, one of the line cooks, asked if she'd found any dinosaur DNA. Rachel, the hostess, suggested Maya could turn it into a tourist attraction. Come see the world's most worthless mine. Each joke landed like confirmation of what Maya already believed about herself. That she was a woman whose judgment was so fundamentally flawed she'd sign away her future to a man who'd betrayed her, and now she'd inherited a monument to failure from a grandmother she'd never known. Marcus learned about the inheritance when his attorney contacted Maya's about asset disclosure during final divorce proceedings. The conversation, relayed through her court-appointed legal aid attorney, had been brief and dismissive. Mr. Chen's counsel inquired about the Alaska property. When informed of its assessed value and condition, they declined to pursue it as marital property. Mr. Chen apparently found the situation emblematic of your financial acumen. His words, not mine. The contempt stung worse than the divorce itself. Marcus had always managed their money, had always made the investment decisions, had always positioned himself as the financially sophisticated partner while implying Maya's inability to understand complex economics. Now he was using her inheritance of a worthless mine as evidence of her incompetence, proof that she'd always been the liability in their partnership. Jennifer Hastings, Marcus's new partner in both business and life, posted on social media about their company's latest funding round. $15 million from venture capital, expansion plans, partnerships with major pharmaceutical companies. The photos showed them at the announcement party, champagne glasses raised, Marcus's arm around Jennifer's waist in casual possession. Maya blocked the accounts, but the damage was done. The comparison burned into her consciousness. Jennifer, successful, sophisticated, standing beside Marcus at the helm of a biotech empire. Maya, waitressing for tips and owning a defunct mine worth less than a fast food meal. Lily's violin teacher, Mrs. Park, approached Maya one afternoon with the kind of careful compassion that preceded bad news. Maya, Lily is tremendously talented. She should be preparing for conservatory auditions, working with a more advanced instructor, participating in youth orchestras. But those opportunities require resources I know are limited right now. The unspoken question hung between them. Could Maya afford to give Lily what her talent deserved? The answer was obvious to both of them. I'm doing everything I can, Maya said, hating how defensive she sounded. I know you are, and I'm not suggesting you're not. I'm just saying that Lily has a gift that needs nurturing, and there are programs, scholarships, opportunities, but they require upfront costs, travel, time. I wanted you to be aware. Translation: Lily's potential was being wasted by Maya's poverty, another casualty of divorce and betrayal, and the systematic dismantling of everything Maya had built. The breaking point came 3 weeks after accepting the inheritance, when the apartment's landlord delivered a rent increase notice. $1,800 starting next month, a 29% jump that was technically legal under Seattle's rental laws, but practically impossible for Maya to absorb. She'd been searching for cheaper apartments for months, but Seattle's housing crisis meant everything affordable required application fees she couldn't pay and credit checks she couldn't pass. Maya sat at their small kitchen table that night, calculator and notebook open, trying to find the math that would make survival possible. Every scenario ended in negative numbers. She could work more shifts, but childcare would consume the additional income. She could move farther from the city, but transportation costs and time would offset savings. She could ask Marcus for more support, but his attorney had made clear that any modification request would be contested and expensive. The amber mine sat at the edge of her thoughts, a useless asset that mocked her with its existence. She pulled up the property documents again, studying maps that showed the claim's location near Coldfoot, Alaska, a town of 10 people serving as a truck stop on the Dalton Highway. The nearest city was Fairbanks, 260 miles south. On impulse, she searched Amber Value 2024 and found articles about the amber market's evolution. Jewelry-grade amber still sold for modest prices, but scientific-grade amber, specimens containing preserved insects or plant matter, commanded premium prices from researchers and collectors. Perfectly preserved specimens could sell for thousands per piece. The real revelation came from an article about ancient DNA recovery from amber inclusions. Scientists had successfully extracted genetic material from insects trapped 100 million years ago, opening possibilities for evolutionary biology research and even, theoretically, genetic reconstruction of extinct species. Institutions paid substantial sums for amber containing well-preserved biological specimens. Maya's heart accelerated reading about a single piece of amber sold to a research institute for $2 million. A specimen containing a perfectly preserved feathered dinosaur tail that revolutionized understanding of bird evolution. The article mentioned that most valuable amber came from Myanmar and the Dominican Republic, but that Alaska had produced scientifically significant specimens in the past. The thought that formed was desperate and probably delusional. What if the Reeves amber claim contained something valuable? What if Evelyn's husband had abandoned the mine, not because the amber had no worth, but because jewelry demand had collapsed before anyone assessed the scientific value? Carla's voice echoed in her memory. At least it's something, right? Maybe it was more than something. Maybe it was a chance, however remote, to find a way forward that didn't involve working herself to exhaustion while watching her daughter's potential wither from lack of opportunity. The decision crystallized over 3 sleepless nights. Maya calculated that a trip to Alaska would cost approximately $2,000. Flights for her and Lily, minimal supplies, a week away from work that she couldn't really afford. The money would come from her emergency fund, the $2,400 she'd saved by selling her wedding ring and most of her jewelry, the buffer between survival and homelessness. Spending it on investigating a worthless mine was objectively insane. It was the kind of decision that would confirm everyone's judgment of her, desperate, foolish, grasping at impossible hope instead of accepting reality. But reality was eviction in 3 months, Lily's talent being constrained by poverty, and a future of diminishing returns where working harder produced less and less stability. If there was even a 1% chance the mine contained something valuable, wasn't that worth investigating before surrendering completely? She called Sarah Morrison in Fairbanks the next morning. "I want to visit the property. How do I get there?" Sarah's surprise was audible. "Ms. Chun, I really don't recommend that. The mine has been abandoned for 35 years. It's remote, potentially dangerous, and there's no commercial value." "I understand, but it's mine, and I want to see it before deciding what to do with it. How do I get there?" The attorney sighed, recognizing determination that logic wouldn't deter. "You need to charter a flight from Fairbanks to Coldfoot, then hire someone with appropriate equipment to take you to the claim. It's not cheap, and it's not safe for someone unfamiliar with the interior. If you're serious about this, I can connect you with Jack Petrov, a bush pilot who knew your grandmother. He might be willing to help, though I can't promise he won't try to talk you out of it. Please connect us. And thank you." Ms. Chun, Maya, as your grandmother's attorney and someone who cares about what happens to you, I'm asking you to reconsider. That mine took everything from Evelyn's husband. He died believing he'd wasted his life chasing amber that would never be worth extracting. Don't let it consume your resources, too. I don't have resources left to consume. That's why I'm going. The conversation with Lily happened that evening, Maya kneeling to her daughter's eye level in their small living room. "Sweet girl, I need to talk to you about something. Remember that mine I inherited from my grandmother in Alaska?" Lily nodded, her expression showing the careful neutrality she'd developed since the divorce, the learned behavior of a child trying not to upset fragile parents. "I'm thinking about going to see it to find out if there's anything valuable there. It would mean missing a week of school, flying to Alaska, which would be an adventure, but also kind of difficult. What do you think? Are we going to find treasure?" Lily's voice carried hope and skepticism in equal measure. 11 years old, and already learning that treasure existed mostly in stories. "Probably not. But maybe we'll find something that could help us, could make things a little easier. I don't want to promise anything because I don't know what we'll find, but I think it's worth looking. Does that make sense?" Lily thought for a moment, then asked a question that cut deeper than she intended. "Is Dad helping pay for the trip?" "No, sweetheart. This is just us. It's always just us now. Then we should go. Even if we don't find anything, we're trying. That's what you always tell me about violin. Keep trying even when it's hard." Maya pulled her daughter into a hug that lasted longer than necessary, feeling Lily's small heartbeat against her chest, the weight of responsibility and love that made every risk feel simultaneously necessary and terrifying. Jack Petrov answered his phone on the fourth ring, his voice gravelly with age and cigarettes. "Sarah says you're Evelyn's granddaughter. Want to see that curse mine. I told Evelyn's husband in '89 to abandon it. Told Evelyn again in 2005 when she asked me about reopening it. Now I'm telling you, there's nothing there worth finding. Save your money. Mr. Petrov, I appreciate the advice, but I'm coming anyway. I need someone who can fly me there and help me access the mine safely. Sarah said you're the best bush pilot in the interior. Are you willing to help? You got kids?" The question surprised her. "A daughter. 11. She's coming with me." Jack's silence stretched long enough that Maya thought he'd hung up. "Then, all right, I'll fly you. Not because I think you'll find anything, but because I liked Evelyn and I'd rather you do this stupidity with someone who knows the territory. $800 for the round trip, another $400 if you want me to wait at the site and help with extraction if you find anything. I'll provide basic safety equipment, but you bring your own food and cold weather gear. This is May, so temperatures will be mild, but Alaska mild can still kill city people who aren't prepared. Deal. When can we go?" "Friday. Meet me at Fairbanks International, North Terminal, 6 a.m. And Ms. Chen, bring realistic expectations. I've flown dozens of people to abandoned claims over 40 years. None of them found treasure. Most found debt and disappointment." Maya booked the flights that night, Seattle to Fairbanks, leaving Thursday, returning the following Wednesday. The cost, $1,400 for both tickets. She added cold weather clothing from a Goodwill store, basic camping supplies, and a first aid kit. Total expenditure, $1,847, leaving $553 in her emergency fund and nothing in her checking account after rent. The diner manager, Ron, was less understanding about the week off. "Maya, you've already used all your PTO for Lily's school conferences and that medical emergency. I can't hold your position for an unpaid week. Not with our staffing situation. Ron, please. I'll work doubles when I get back, cover any shifts you need. But I have to do this." His expression mixed sympathy with hard business reality. "I like you. You're a good worker, but I can't make exceptions. If you go, I'll have to post your position. If someone fills it before you're back, that's how it is." "I'm sorry." Maya walked out of the diner that afternoon, uncertain whether she'd just quit or been fired, knowing only that she'd committed to a path that offered no retreat and uncertain reward. The reactions from her former life came through text messages and social media posts. Marcus's sister, who'd remained cordial after the divorce, sent a message dripping with concern. "Maya, I heard about your Alaska plan. I really think you should reconsider. This sounds like a breakdown more than a business decision. Have you talked to anyone? There are resources for people going through difficult times." Translation: Maya was having a mental health crisis, making irrational decisions, confirming everything the Chun family had believed about her instability and poor judgment. Her friend Rachel from the biotech days, one of the few who'd stayed in touch after the divorce, was more direct. "Babe, this is crazy. You're spending your emergency fund to investigate a mine that professionals say is worthless. This is exactly the kind of desperate decision that keeps people trapped in poverty. Please think about Lily and make the responsible choice." Irresponsible choice. Maya had made responsible choices her entire adult life. She'd married Marcus responsibly, signed a prenup without fighting because that was the responsible thing to maintain family harmony. She'd worked responsibly to build their company while he got his credentials. She'd accepted the divorce terms responsibly because fighting would have been expensive and uncertain. Responsibility had left her working for tips while her ex-husband posed for Forbes magazine profiles about biotech innovation. Maybe responsible was the wrong metric. Maybe desperate and foolish and grasping at impossible hope was exactly what she needed to be. The flight to Fairbanks departed Thursday evening, turbulence over the Pacific Northwest giving way to startling clarity as they crossed into Canada. Lily pressed against the window, watching landscape transform from city lights to absolute darkness broken by occasional clusters of habitation. By the time they began descending toward Fairbanks, the midnight sun had painted the sky in shades of amber and gold that seemed impossibly bright for 11 p.m. The hotel near the airport cost $120, more than Maya wanted to spend, but necessary for the early morning departure. They ate vending machine sandwiches for dinner, Lily chattering about the adventure while Maya tried to quiet the voice, insisting she'd made a catastrophic mistake. Jack Petrov was exactly as Maya had imagined. Late 60s, weathered face, flannel, and denim uniform, eyes that suggested he'd seen every variety of human foolishness and found it mostly predictable. His Cessna 185, a bush plane modified with oversized tires, sat on the tarmac beside larger commercial aircraft like a toy among real vehicles. "You're Evelyn's granddaughter. I can see it in the jawline. She was stubborn too." He studied Lily with an expression that might have been approval. "Your daughter knows how to sit still and follow instructions?" "Yes, sir," Lily answered before Maya could respond. "Good, because if you don't, we could crash and die. Interior Alaska doesn't forgive mistakes." He softened slightly. "But if you do listen, this'll be the most beautiful flight you've ever taken. Load your gear. We leave in 10 minutes. The flight north traced the Dalton Highway, that tenuous line of civilization cutting through wilderness that stretched to every horizon. Jack provided headsets that dampened engine noise while allowing communication, and narrated their progress with the efficiency of someone who'd made this flight hundreds of times. "That's the Yukon River. Those are the Brooks Range foothills. That burned area is from the 2019 wildfires. We're about 40 minutes from Coldfoot, then another 20 to your grandmother's claim." The land below looked simultaneously beautiful and hostile. Endless forest broken by rivers and lakes. Mountains rising with geological indifference to human presence. Maya understood why amber mining had failed here. Extraction required infrastructure, roads, equipment, markets. Everything necessary for commerce existed hundreds of miles away, making even valuable deposits economically unviable. They landed on a gravel strip that barely qualified as an airfield, more like a wide spot in the landscape where Jack's skill and experience made touchdown possible. He taxied to a stop near a cluster of prefabricated buildings that looked temporary despite decades of occupation. "Coldfoot," Jack announced. "Population, 10 in summer, 2 in winter, all of them tougher than you. We refuel here, then it's 20 minutes by air to your claim. No landing strip there, so I'm putting down on the riverbank. You're going to help me unload camping gear because we're staying overnight. There's no daylight urgency in May, but I'm not flying in and out twice in one day." The river landing was smoother than Maya expected, Jack's expertise making the impossible seem routine. They touched down on a gravel bar beside a river that ran clear and fast, the sound of water over stone providing constant ambient noise. Jack secured the plane, then pointed upslope. "Your grandmother's mine is about half a mile that way, up the drainage. I recommend we set camp here, then hike up. If the structures are still standing, we can assess. If they've collapsed, we document and leave." "Agreed," Maya nodded, helping unload supplies while Lily explored the riverbank under strict instructions not to approach the water. The wilderness felt different than anything she'd experienced. Not hostile, but utterly indifferent. The trees didn't care if they survived. The river would flow regardless of their presence. Nature operating on scales that reduced human concerns to temporary disruptions. The hike up slope took 40 minutes, Jack setting a pace that accommodated Lily while maintaining efficiency. The drainage was steep, muddy, thick with alders and willows that grabbed clothing and scratched exposed skin. Jack moved through it with practiced ease, pausing occasionally to check their bearing against a GPS unit that looked older than Lily. They smelled the mine before seeing it, the distinctive scent of exposed earth and old timber, minerals leaching into groundwater. Then the trees opened, and the reef's amber claim revealed itself in all its failed glory. The mine entrance was larger than Maya expected, a horizontal tunnel driven into the hillside with timber supports still visible despite 35 years of abandonment. The opening gaped dark, and uninviting, partially collapsed on one side but still accessible. Beside it, an equipment shed leaned at 30 degrees, roof partially gone, contents visible through gaps in the walls. Rusted tools, broken machinery, the detritus of abandoned industry. The cabin stood 50 yards from the mine entrance, surprisingly intact. One room, log construction, roof sagging but not collapsed, windows broken or missing, door hanging on a single hinge. Someone had built it with care, thinking it would be home during the years of extraction that would make them wealthy. Jack surveyed the site with professional assessment. Better condition than I expected. Mine entrance is partially viable, though I wouldn't go more than 20 feet in without serious shoring. Cabin structurally sound enough for shelter if needed. Shed's a loss. Your grandfather put real work into this before the market collapsed. What killed the operation? Maya asked, moving toward the mine entrance cautiously. Economics. By '89, amber jewelry was out of fashion. Synthetic alternatives were cheaper, and Baltic amber flooded the market at prices that made Alaskan extraction unprofitable. Your grandfather, Thomas Reeves, he kept believing the market would recover. Evelyn finally made him stop when her savings were gone, and he'd mortgaged everything. They moved back to Fairbanks broke and broken. Thomas died in '92, heart attack. Evelyn always said the mine killed him, not the heart failure. The story settled over Maya with familiar weight. Another person who'd bet everything on unlikely success and lost. Another family destroyed by hope and bad economics. She was following a pattern established by grandparents she'd never known, making the same desperate choices that had led to the same inevitable failure. Lily's voice cut through the despair. "Mom, look." She stood at the mine entrance, pointing at something on the ground. Maya approached carefully, seeing what had caught her daughter's attention. Pieces of amber scattered near the opening, ranging from marble-sized to fragments as large as her fist. They glowed in the afternoon sunlight, translucent gold and orange and deep burgundy, beautiful and worthless according to everything she'd been told. Jack crouched, picking up one of the larger pieces. He held it to the light, squinting at inclusions visible within the amber matrix. His expression changed subtly, surprise replacing resignation. "Miss Chen, I'm not an expert, but this specimen has what looks like an insect inclusion. Possibly a beetle. Well preserved from what I can see." He handed it to Maya. The amber felt warm in her palm, smoother than she expected, its weight suggesting substance. Inside, suspended in golden transparency, a dark shape that might have been insect or might have been debris. Impossible to tell without proper examination. Thomas must have been pulling decent specimens. Jack continued. The jewelry market didn't care about inclusions, but collectors and researchers do. This might be worth something to a university or museum. Might be. The words Maya had been living on for months. Might be worth something. Might lead somewhere. Might justify the risk. The mine entrance beckoned, dark and dangerous and promising nothing. Maya had come 3,000 miles, spent most of her emergency fund, possibly lost her job, and dragged her daughter into Alaska wilderness based on desperate hope and refusal to accept that she'd already lost everything worth having. Jack checked his watch. It's 2 p.m. We have hours of daylight left. If you want to explore the mine entrance, we can do it safely with proper precautions. But Ms. Chun, Maya, I need you to understand something. Even if there are amber specimens in there, even if some have scientific value, the extraction and sale process takes months. This isn't treasure you can carry out and immediately convert to cash. I know, but I need to see what's there. I need to know if there's any chance this was worth doing. Jack nodded, unsurprised. Then let's do it right. I've got safety equipment in my pack. We'll assess the first 50 feet, see what condition the tunnel's in, look for viable deposits. If it's too dangerous or too collapsed, we document and leave. Agreed. Agreed. They spent the next hour preparing. Hard hats with lights, dust masks, emergency rope, basic first aid, communication protocols. Jack walked them through cave safety procedures, emphasizing that they'd retreat at any sign of instability. Lily would stay outside the entrance, within sight, but not at risk. The mine entrance swallowed them into darkness punctuated by their headlamps. The air inside was cold, damp, smelling of earth and time, and the slow oxidation of minerals. Timber supports lined the tunnel, some intact, others cracked or leaning, holding back tons of earth through sheer structural inertia. Jack moved carefully, testing each step, examining supports before proceeding. Thomas did decent work here. These timbers are holding better than expected. Tunnel's about 6 feet high, maybe 5 feet wide. Dug following an amber seam if the scatter pattern outside is any indication. They proceeded 20 feet, then 30, the tunnel remaining stable despite decades of abandonment. At 40 feet, the headlamps revealed why the operation had been abandoned. A collapse, ceiling and walls giving way in a massive blockage that filled the tunnel from floor to ceiling with broken rock and earth. Jack studied the collapse with professional interest. That's why Thomas stopped. Probably happened during spring breakup, ground shift from freeze-thaw cycles. Would have taken months to clear with hand tools, and by then the market had collapsed anyway. Not worth the effort. Maya's heart sank. The mine's treasure, if it existed, lay beyond a blockage that would require heavy equipment and expertise to clear. This was the end of the investigation, confirmation that desperation had led her to another failure. Then she saw it, a gap near the top of the collapse, where ceiling met blockage, a space perhaps 2 feet high and 3 feet wide. Air moved through it. She could feel the current, suggesting the tunnel continued beyond. Jack, could someone fit through that gap? He followed her gaze, then shook his head firmly. Absolutely not. That collapse is unstable. That gap could close at any moment, and we have no idea what's beyond. Going through would be incredibly dangerous and likely pointless. But possible? Ms. Chen, I can't in good conscience. I'm not asking for your conscience. I'm asking if it's physically possible. Jack's expression showed conflict between responsibility and recognition of desperation he'd seen in dozens of failed prospectors. A small person could probably squeeze through, but they'd be risking their life for almost certain disappointment. Maya looked at the gap, calculating. She was 5 feet 4 inches, 120 pounds, small enough. The question wasn't whether she could fit, but whether she should risk everything on one final desperate attempt to find something that probably didn't exist. Lily's voice echoed from the entrance. Mom? Everything okay? Everything was not okay. Everything had been not okay for months, spiraling downward toward inevitable catastrophe. This mine was her last chance to find something, anything, that could change trajectory. Jack, if I go through that gap and it collapses, can you get me out? Maybe. Maybe not. This is insane, Maya. You're risking your life for the possibility that my grandmother's husband found something valuable and died before extracting it. For the chance that I don't have to watch my daughter's talent wither because I can't afford to nurture it. For one opportunity to make a choice that isn't surrender. The silence stretched between them. Then Jack sighed. The sound of someone who'd lost this argument dozens of times to people who couldn't be saved from themselves. If you're doing this stupidity, we're doing it carefully. I'll belay you with rope. You've got 10 minutes beyond that gap. You take photographs of anything interesting, you don't touch anything heavy that might shift the collapse, and at the first sign of instability, you retreat immediately. Understood. Understood. The rope harness felt alien around her waist and chest. Jack's knots professional and tight. He positioned himself near the collapse, braced against solid wall, rope feeding through a carabiner attached to his harness. Remember, 10 minutes, photographs only, retreat on my signal or at any danger sign. Your daughter needs you alive more than rich. Maya approached the gap, her headlamp illuminating the narrow space between collapse and ceiling. It looked smaller up close, the passage requiring crawling and twisting to navigate. She could hear her heartbeat, feel adrenaline making her hands shake, taste fear metallic in the back of her throat. Then she thought of Marcus and Jennifer celebrating another funding round while she worked for tips. Thought of Lily's teacher saying her daughter's talent required resources Maya couldn't provide. Thought of the eviction notice that was coming because $1,800 monthly was impossible. She entered the gap. The space was tighter than it appeared, rock pressing against her back and stomach simultaneously, requiring shallow breathing and precise movements. Sharp edges caught clothing, scraped skin, promised injury if she moved wrong. The collapse felt unstable beneath her, small rocks shifting with her weight, threatening larger movement. She crawled forward, inches at a time, the gap seeming to extend forever. Her headlamp showed only rock and darkness ahead, no indication of where the passage ended or whether it ended at all. Panic began building, the confined space triggering claustrophobic response she hadn't known she possessed. Then the gap opened. She pulled herself through into a chamber beyond the collapse, and her headlamp revealed what Thomas Reeves had found before the market collapsed and his heart gave out. The chamber was roughly circular, maybe 15 feet in diameter, ceiling 8 feet high in the center. And every surface, every wall and ceiling, every exposed surface glowed with amber. Not scattered pieces, not occasional deposits. Entire seams of amber, exposed by Thomas's careful excavation, preserved for 35 years in darkness and cold. The headlamp caught inclusions everywhere. Insects, plant material, organic matter suspended in translucent gold like specimens in the world's largest microscope slide. Maya's hand shook as she pulled out her phone, camera function lighting up, and began photographing. Every wall, every surface, close-ups of inclusions that showed details even without magnification. A spider with legs extended. A beetle perfectly preserved. Plant material that might have been leaves or flowers from ecosystems that existed millions of years ago. The chamber was a time capsule, a window into ancient Alaska when the climate was tropical and these amber deposits formed from resin in prehistoric forests. And Thomas Reeves had found it, had excavated it, and then been forced to abandon it when market forces made his discovery worthless. Jack's voice echoed through the gap. Maya, time check. 8 minutes. You need to start retreating. Jack, you need to see this. The entire chamber is amber. Hundreds of pounds, maybe thousands. Specimens everywhere. Silence. Then, take your photos and get out. We'll assess from safety. Maya documented everything, her phone's camera capturing evidence that might mean salvation or might mean nothing, depending on what was preserved in that amber. She filled the phone's storage with images, then reluctantly began crawling back toward the gap. The return was harder, exhaustion and adrenaline making her movements clumsy. Twice she had to stop, controlling panic as the confined space triggered fear that rational thought couldn't dismiss. But eventually she felt Jack's hands gripping her arms, pulling her through the final feet of passage. She emerged into the tunnel covered in rock dust, bleeding from dozens of small cuts, and holding a phone full of photographs that might change everything. Lily ran to her the moment they exited the mine, small arms wrapping tight. Mom, you're bleeding. Are you okay? I'm okay, baby. I found something. I don't know if it's valuable, but I found something. Jack examined the photographs in the fading afternoon light, his weathered face showing surprise that bordered on shock. Miss Chun, I'm not an expert, but these specimens look exceptional. The preservation quality, the variety of inclusions, the sheer volume. If even a fraction of this is scientifically significant, you might have found something substantial. What do I do next? You contact Dr. Melissa Hartwick at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. She's the premier amber researcher in Alaska, has connections with institutions worldwide. Show her these photos. If she thinks there's value, she'll guide you through proper extraction and sale. But Maya, manage your expectations. Scientific value doesn't mean you'll be rich. It means you might have something worth extracting properly. They hiked back to camp as midnight sun painted the sky in impossible gold. Maya's body ached. Her hands shook with exhaustion and adrenaline crash, but her mind raced with calculations and possibilities and desperate hope that refused to die despite every rational reason for surrender. That night, sleeping in a tent beside an Alaskan river with her daughter curled against her side, Maya Chen allowed herself to imagine a future that wasn't defeat. The amber chamber waited in darkness, its treasures suspended in time, promising nothing but offering a chance that mere days ago hadn't existed. Tomorrow they'd fly back to Fairbanks. She'd contact Dr. Hartwick, and she'd begin the process of discovering whether her grandmother's husband had found treasure or whether Maya had just confirmed that desperation led to the same failure in every generation. But tonight, listening to Lily's breathing and Jack's snoring and the river's endless flow, she allowed herself to believe that sometimes desperate choices led somewhere other than ruin. Sometimes the worthless inheritance was worth everything. Sometimes $1 could become salvation. The fight wasn't over. The journey had barely begun. But for the first time in months, Maya Chen felt something other than defeat settling in her chest. She felt possibility. And in the darkness of interior Alaska, surrounded by wilderness that didn't care whether she succeeded or failed, that feeling was enough. The flight back to Fairbanks traced the same route in reverse, but everything looked different through Maya's exhausted perspective. The wilderness that had seemed hostile now appeared protective, guarding secrets that had waited 35 years for someone desperate enough to look. Jack flew in characteristic silence, occasionally glancing at Maya with an expression that mixed concern with something that might have been respect. Lily slept against the window, her face pressed to the glass, mouth slightly open in the complete surrender of childhood exhaustion. She'd stayed up past midnight, watching the sun barely dip below the horizon before rising again, marveling at the impossibility of Alaska's summer light. Maya had stayed awake longer, photographing the amber chamber images on her phone until her eyes burned and Jack had insisted she sleep. Now, descending toward Fairbanks in the clear morning air, reality began asserting itself over hope. The photographs on her phone might show valuable specimens or might show common inclusions worth nothing. Dr. Hartwick might see scientific significance or might see another desperate person grasping at worthless inheritance. The chamber might contain millions in prehistoric DNA or might contain pretty rocks that universities already possessed in abundance. They landed at Fairbanks International at 9:47 a.m., Jack taxiing to the same spot they'd departed from less than 48 hours earlier. He helped them unload gear with efficiency that suggested he'd done this routine hundreds of times. Hopeful prospectors arriving, disappointed prospectors leaving, the cycle repeating across decades. Miss Chen, Maya, I need to tell you something before you contact Dr. Hartwick. Jack's voice carried the weight of experience and warning. I've flown dozens of people to abandoned claims. Most find nothing. Some find specimens they think are valuable. But the process from discovery to sale, if sale even happens, takes months or years. Universities move slowly. Authentication is rigorous. And scientific value doesn't translate directly to cash value the way most people hope. Are you saying this was pointless? I'm saying temper your expectations. What you found is significant enough to investigate properly. But don't start spending money you don't have based on photographs and hope. Alaska is full of people who found something promising and ended up broker than when they started. Maya nodded, the familiar weight of reality settling over the brief lightness she'd felt. How do I contact Dr. Hartwick? I have her number. She and I have worked together on field research projects. I'll call, explain the situation, see if she's willing to review your photographs. If she is, you'll need to send them through secure channels. Universities are paranoid about intellectual property and claim jumping. The call happened in Jack's truck while Lily dozed in the back seat and Maya tried to control the trembling in her hands that came from exhaustion, fear, and caffeine consumed to stay functional. Jack's side of the conversation revealed little. Professional pleasantries, brief explanation, then silence while he listened. His expression gave nothing away. When he hung up, he turned to Maya with careful neutrality. Dr. Hartwick will see you this afternoon at 2 p.m. Her office is at the University of Alaska Fairbanks Geophysical Institute. She's cleared her schedule for an hour. That's significant. Melissa doesn't clear her schedule for random prospectors unless something catches her interest. Did you tell her what I found? I told her you discovered an amber chamber with extensive inclusions at your inherited claim. She asked if the inclusions appeared diverse and well-preserved. I said, yes, based on your photos. That's when she cleared her schedule. Hope surged again, dangerous and intoxicating. Maya forced it down, remembering Jack's warning about expectations. What should I bring to the meeting? Your phone with the photographs, the property deed showing you own the mineral rights, and realistic understanding that this is preliminary assessment, not valuation. Melissa will tell you if what you found merits further investigation. She won't tell you it's worth X millions and solve all your problems. The hotel cost another $120, the same chain as before, but this time the price felt different. Maya was spending from the $553 remaining in her emergency fund, watching her buffer between survival and catastrophe shrink with each transaction. They checked in at 11 a.m., giving Maya 3 hours to shower, change into clothes that didn't smell like mine dust and river water, and prepare for a meeting that might determine her daughter's entire future. Lily woke long enough to eat gas station sandwiches that cost $18 total, then returned to sleep with the deep unconsciousness of a child who'd stayed up past midnight and hiked through wilderness. Maya sat beside her daughter's sleeping form, scrolling through the amber chamber photographs, trying to see them through expert eyes. The images showed exactly what she remembered: walls covered in amber seams, countless inclusions suspended in translucent gold, organic material preserved in detail that seemed impossible for specimens millions of years old. But Maya wasn't a scientist. She couldn't distinguish valuable from common, significant from mundane. Everything depended on Dr. Hartwick's assessment. The University of Alaska Fairbanks campus sprawled across hills north of the city, buildings arranged with the practical aesthetics of institutions focused on function over beauty. The Geophysical Institute occupied a modern structure that stood out among older buildings, glass and steel, announcing serious research funding. Maya arrived 15 minutes early, having left Lily sleeping at the hotel with strict instructions to call if she woke. The lobby directory directed her to the third floor, Department of Geology and Paleobiology, where a receptionist with the polite professionalism of academic gatekeepers checked her appointment and directed her to wait. Dr. Melissa Hartwick emerged at exactly 2 p.m., a woman in her late 50s wearing field clothes and carrying an expression that suggested limited patience for time wasters. Her handshake was firm, her eye contact direct, her entire demeanor radiating competence and skepticism in equal measure. Ms. Chen, Jack Petrov, rarely calls me about prospector discoveries. In 40 years, he's contacted me maybe 6 times. Each time, the find was significant enough to merit publication. That's the only reason I'm seeing you without preliminary documentation. You have 10 minutes to show me why this was worth clearing my schedule. The office was organized chaos. Rock samples covering every surface, scientific papers stacked in towers, amber specimens in display cases along one wall. Dr. Hartwick gestured Maya toward a chair, then held out her hand expectantly. Phone, please. I'll connect it to the display monitor. The amber chamber photographs filled a 50-inch screen with detail Maya hadn't seen on her phone. Dr. Hartwick cycled through images methodically, her expression shifting from professional skepticism to focused attention to something that might have been excitement. She stopped on a close-up of a wall section showing multiple inclusions, zooming in until individual specimens filled the screen. Ms. Chen, where exactly is this chamber? About half a mile from the Reeves Amber Claim entrance, beyond a collapse in the main tunnel. My grandfather excavated it in the 1980s before the market collapsed. Thomas Reeves was your grandfather? My grandmother's husband. I never met him. Dr. Hartwick nodded slowly, still studying the photographs. I knew of Thomas. He contacted me in 1987, wanted authentication for specimens he'd found. I was a graduate student then, didn't have authority to help him. By the time I did, he'd abandoned the claim and died shortly after. I always wondered what happened to his finds. She cycled through more photographs, pausing on each inclusion, occasionally making notes on a tablet. The silence stretched until Maya couldn't bear it. Dr. Hartwick, are these specimens valuable? That's the wrong question. The right question is, are they scientifically significant? And the answer appears to be yes, Potentially very yes. She turned from the screen to face Maya directly. What you photographed shows amber from the late Cretaceous period, approximately 70 to 80 million years ago. The inclusions appear exceptionally well preserved, showing details I can't fully assess without physical examination, but which suggest minimal degradation. What does that mean in practical terms? It means the specimens might contain extractable DNA. Ancient DNA degrades over time, but amber provides unique preservation conditions. If these inclusions contain genetic material from Cretaceous ecosystems, they'd be invaluable for evolutionary biology research, paleoclimate studies, and understanding ancient biodiversity. Maya's heart accelerated. How invaluable? I won't speculate on monetary value. That depends on authentication, extraction success, institutional interest, and market factors I can't predict. But I can tell you that institutions pay substantial sums for confirmed Cretaceous amber with extractable DNA. We're talking research grants, museum acquisitions, private collector markets that operate at levels most people don't realize exist. Dr. Hartwick stood, moving to one of the display cases along the wall. She retrieved a specimen about the size of a golf ball, holding it to the light. This piece came from Myanmar, contains a perfectly preserved beetle from 99 million years ago. I purchased it for my collection for $15,000. That's a single specimen, common family, no extractable DNA. What you photographed suggests hundreds of specimens, potentially diverse families, possibly with viable genetic material. The numbers made Maya dizzy. Hundreds of specimens at $15,000 each would be millions. But Dr. Hartwick had warned against speculation, and Maya forced herself to focus on next steps rather than fantasies. What do I need to do? First, we need physical samples for authentication. I'll need to visit the site, extract specimens under controlled conditions, conduct preliminary analysis. If authentication confirms what these photographs suggest, we'll need to discuss extraction strategy, preservation protocols, and institutional partnerships. How long does that take? Authentication? 2 to 3 weeks for preliminary results, longer for comprehensive analysis. But Ms. Chen, I need to be clear about something. You own the mineral rights, which means you own the amber. But extracting it properly, preserving scientific integrity, and maximizing value requires expertise you don't possess. You'll need partners, contracts, legal frameworks. This isn't a matter of digging up treasure and selling it on eBay. Maya had expected complications, but the reality still felt overwhelming. What kind of partners? At minimum, a geological survey team for safe extraction, a preservation lab for specimen processing, and institutional buyers or research partners who can afford acquisition. I can facilitate those connections if authentication proves promising. But it will cost money up front, require legal agreements, and take time. I don't have money or time. I spent my emergency fund getting here. I probably lost my job. I have rent I can't pay and a daughter who deserved better than watching her mother fail. The admission came out sharper than intended, desperation breaking through professional composure. Dr. Hartwick's expression softened slightly, recognition of familiar struggle passing across her face. Ms. Chen, I've spent 40 years in academia watching important discoveries get lost because the people who found them couldn't afford to develop them properly. I won't let that happen here if these specimens are what they appear to be. If you're willing to work with me, I can help structure this so you maintain ownership while getting the expertise needed for proper extraction. What does that cost me? Professionally? Nothing immediately. I'm proposing a research partnership where my lab handles authentication and initial extraction in exchange for first rights to publish findings. You retain ownership and sale rights. Any specimens we use for research, you get fair market compensation. Specimens sold to institutions or collectors, you keep proceeds minus reasonable extraction costs. Why would you do that? Because what you found might be one of the most significant amber deposits discovered in North America in decades. Because I've spent my career studying Cretaceous ecosystems, and this could provide data I've been seeking for 20 years. And because, frankly, I'd rather work with you directly than watch some extraction company swoop in, pay you pennies, and botch the scientific value. Maya studied the woman across the desk, trying to detect deception or hidden costs. But Dr. Hartwick's directness felt genuine. Her motivation transparently self-interested in ways that made sense. She wanted access to potentially groundbreaking research. Maya wanted financial survival. Their interests aligned cleanly. When can you visit the site? I'll need to arrange field equipment and a small team. Minimum 1 week, possibly 2, depending on weather and logistics. Jack can fly us in. I'll need to ask him, but probably yes. Good. In the meantime, I'll begin preliminary analysis of your photographs, consult with colleagues about specimen identification, and start drafting partnership agreements for your review. Do you have legal representation? Maya almost laughed. I have a court-appointed legal aid attorney who handled my divorce. I don't think she specializes in mineral rights and scientific partnerships. I'll recommend someone. Alaska has attorneys who specialize in mining claims and research collaborations. You'll want independent counsel reviewing anything I propose. This needs to be legitimate and equitable. The meeting extended past the scheduled hour, Dr. Hartwick asking detailed questions about the chamber's size, accessibility, condition, surrounding geology. She took notes with practiced efficiency, occasionally stopping to enlarge photographs and point out specific inclusions. This specimen here, the one that looks like a wasp, if it's family Ichneumonidae from the Cretaceous, that's significant. We have very few well-preserved parasitic wasp specimens from that period. And this one, plant material, possibly angiosperm flowers, that could provide data about flowering plant evolution. Every image I see raises questions I've been trying to answer for decades. Her excitement was controlled, but visible, the passion of a researcher encountering exactly what they'd been seeking. Maya recognized the expression because she'd seen it in Marcus during their early days building the biotech company, before success had hardened him into someone who measured worth in stock options and calculated relationships like business transactions. The thought of Marcus triggered memory of the world waiting outside this office. Seattle, eviction notices, mockery from everyone who told her the Alaska trip was desperate foolishness. Even if the specimens were valuable, even if Dr. Hartwick's partnership led somewhere, the process would take weeks or months while Maya's immediate crises demanded resolution in days. Dr. Hartwick, I appreciate everything you're offering, but I need to be honest. I'm facing eviction in less than 3 months. I probably lost my waitressing job. I have $535 in my bank account and a daughter depending on me. Even if these specimens are worth millions eventually, I can't wait months to start seeing returns. Dr. Hartwick set down her tablet, giving Maya her full attention. I understand. Financial desperation makes people vulnerable to predatory offers. I've seen prospectors sell valuable finds for pennies because they needed immediate cash. Here's what I can do. If preliminary authentication confirms significant value, I can facilitate a bridge loan against future proceeds. Not from me personally, but from institutional partners who specialize in funding scientific acquisitions. It's not ideal. You'll pay interest, but it would provide immediate funds while we work through proper extraction and sale. How much are we talking about? That depends entirely on authentication results. But if these specimens are what they appear to be, a bridge loan of $50,000 to $100,000 would be conservative and safe for the lending institution. Enough for you to stabilize your immediate situation while we develop the claim properly. The numbers hit Maya with physical force. $50,000 would solve every immediate crisis. Back rent, security deposit on a better apartment, months of living expenses while she found stable employment, music lessons and opportunities for Lily. It wouldn't make her rich, but it would stop the downward spiral. What if authentication shows the specimens aren't valuable? Then we've wasted 2 weeks and some lab time. You know nothing because there be nothing to loan against. But Ms. Chen, I've been studying amber for 40 years. I know what significant specimens look like. These photographs show something exceptional. I'm not promising you'll be a millionaire, but I'm confident you found something substantial. They concluded the meeting with Maya signing preliminary documentation allowing Dr. Hartwick to begin authentication work and consult with colleagues. The agreements included confidentiality provisions protecting Maya's claim from poachers and clear statements that ownership remained hers pending formal partnerships. Walking out of the Geophysical Institute into afternoon sunlight that painted Fairbanks in shades of gold, Maya felt the same dangerous hope she'd felt emerging from the amber chamber. The rational part of her brain, the part that had learned to expect disappointment, whispered warnings about managing expectations and preparing for failure. But another part, the part that had crawled through a collapse gap in defiance of every sensible instinct, allowed itself to believe that maybe desperate choices sometimes led somewhere other than ruin. The hotel room was exactly as she'd left it, Lily still sleeping with the television playing softly. Maya sat on the edge of the bed, watching her daughter breathe, and pulled out her phone to check messages she'd been avoiding. 12 texts waited, most from the diner asking about her schedule, 2 from Marcus's attorney about finalizing paperwork, 1 from her court-appointed lawyer saying they needed to discuss settlement terms, and 1 from Carla that made Maya's stomach clench. Ron hired someone for your position. Sorry, babe. Let me know if you need a reference. So that was confirmed. Unemployed officially, not just probably. The Seattle rent would be impossible to make. Eviction wasn't a future threat, but an approaching certainty. And she was in Alaska with $535 and hope based on photographs a scientist thought looked promising. Maya should have felt panic. Instead, she felt clarity. The old life in Seattle was ending regardless of what happened with the amber. She couldn't afford the apartment, couldn't work enough hours to make survival viable, couldn't maintain the grinding existence that had consumed her since the divorce. The mine had forced a decision point that was probably inevitable anyway. If the amber was valuable, she had a path forward. If it wasn't, she'd already lost everything that mattered except Lily, and they'd rebuild from wherever they landed. Either way, the desperate gamble had freed her from pretending the status quo was sustainable. She texted Carla back. Thanks for letting me know. You were a good friend when I needed one. Then she opened her email and began composing a message to her landlord explaining she wouldn't be renewing the lease, that she'd vacate by month's end, that she understood this meant forfeiting her security deposit. The words came easily once she accepted they were necessary. Lily woke around dinner time, groggy and disoriented, asking questions about where they were and what happened at the university. Maya explained in terms an 11-year-old could understand. They'd found something potentially valuable. Experts needed to verify it. The process would take weeks, but might lead somewhere good. Does this mean we're not going back to Seattle? Lily's voice carried hope that broke Maya's heart. We're going back to pack and figure out next steps. But baby, I don't think we're staying there. Things are going to change, maybe a lot. Are you okay with that? Lily considered the question with seriousness beyond her years. I like our apartment. I like my school and my friends. But I like when you're not sad all the time more. If Alaska makes you less sad, I'm okay with change. The observation landed with devastating accuracy. Maya hadn't realized how much her depression had been visible to her daughter, how transparent her struggle had been despite efforts to maintain normalcy. Children saw through performance to truth, and Lily had been watching her mother drown for months. I'm going to try very hard to be less sad. Whatever happens with the mine, whatever happens next, I promise I'm going to fight to make things better for us. They ate dinner at a local restaurant, salmon and halibut that tasted nothing like Seattle seafood, prepared by people who knew the fish had been caught that morning rather than shipped frozen. The meal cost $45, an extravagance Maya couldn't afford but chose anyway because Lily deserved one moment of normalcy amid chaos. Jack called while they were finishing dessert, his voice carrying the neutral tone that suggested bad news delivered gently. Maya, I talked to some contacts about your claim. Word's gotten around that Evelyn's granddaughter found something interesting at the Reeve site. You're going to start getting calls from extraction companies offering to buy your claim or partner on development. Is that bad? It's predictable. Alaska's a small state, mining's a smaller community, and news travels. Most offers will be legitimate but unfavorable. Some will be predatory, designed to separate you from valuable property for pennies. Don't sign anything without legal review. Don't commit to partnerships verbally, and don't let anyone pressure you with urgency. Has anyone contacted you? 3 companies in the last 2 hours, asking if I'd fly them to your site for assessment. I declined and didn't provide location details. But others will try different approaches. Be careful who you trust. The warning settled over Maya with familiar weight. Of course, people would emerge, trying to profit from her discovery. That was how the world worked. Those with resources and knowledge exploited those without. She'd seen it in her divorce, in how Marcus had structured their prenup and company ownership, in how every system seemed designed to protect those already protected. Jack, can I trust Dr. Hartwick? Melissa's one of the most ethical researchers I know. If she says she'll do right by you, she will. But get independent legal counsel anyway. Trust is fine, verification is better. The call ended with Jack promising to be available for the field team whenever Dr. Hartwick was ready, and Maya adding another expense to the list of things she couldn't afford. Legal counsel to review scientific partnership agreements. They flew back to Seattle the next morning, Alaska Airlines carrying them south over mountains and forest that looked different now that Maya understood what they'd hidden. The wilderness had seemed hostile on the way north. Now it felt protective, guarding treasure that had waited decades for someone desperate enough to look properly. Lily dozed against the window while Maya tried to plan next steps. Pack the apartment, arrange storage for belongings they couldn't immediately transport, notify Lily's school of withdrawal, find temporary housing while waiting for authentication results. Each task felt overwhelming in isolation. Collectively, they seemed impossible. The Seattle apartment looked smaller and shabbier than she remembered, the walls thin, the carpet stained, the entire space radiating temporariness. Maya had lived here for 8 months, but never decorated, never committed to making a home because she'd known it was just a stopover between the life she'd lost and whatever came next. Now next was arriving faster than she'd expected. The packing took 3 days, sorting belongings into categories. Essential, storage, donate, discard. The process felt like triage, deciding what deserved preservation and what could be abandoned. Most of her pre-divorce possessions were gone already, sold to cover expenses or left in the house Marcus kept. What remained fit into 20 boxes and 8 suitcases. Lily's violin and music books got their own dedicated boxes, wrapped carefully, labeled fragile. Her daughter's talent was the one thing Maya refused to sacrifice, the one investment that mattered more than immediate survival. The mockery resumed when neighbors learned she was leaving. Mrs. Patterson from 3B, who'd been friendly when Maya moved in, made a comment about chasing fairy tales in Alaska instead of facing reality. The building superintendent, collecting her final rent check, mentioned hearing she'd inherited some worthless mine and asked if she'd come to her senses yet. Each comment landed like confirmation of what everyone had believed all along. Maya Chen made poor decisions, trusted the wrong people, and now she was following family tradition by betting everything on unlikely success. They'd seen dozens of desperate people make similar choices. They knew how these stories ended. Marcus sent an email through his attorney requesting updated contact information for child support payments. The message included a line that made Maya's hands shake. Mr. Chen expresses concern about the stability of housing and educational arrangements for Lily. If current circumstances prove inadequate, he's prepared to pursue modified custody that better serves his daughter's interests. The threat was clear. Demonstrate stability or risk losing Lily to a father who'd shown minimal interest in parenting, but maximum interest in control. Marcus had resources to make good on the threat. Attorneys, money, connections, a stable home environment that courts would find appealing compared to a mother living in storage units while betting on Amber deposits. Maya called her court-appointed attorney, Stephanie Rodriguez, who delivered the same message she'd given throughout the divorce. Maya, I understand you're going through difficulties, but from a legal perspective, Marcus has legitimate concerns. If you're homeless or moving frequently, if Lily's education is disrupted, if you can't demonstrate stable environment, he could petition for primary custody and likely win. My advice is to establish stability as quickly as possible. I'm working on it. I found something potentially valuable in Alaska. I'm waiting on authentication that could lead to substantial funds. Stephanie's sigh carried the weight of dozens of similar conversations. Courts don't care about potential funds. They care about current circumstances. Get stable housing, maintain Lily in school, show consistent parenting. The Alaska situation might pan out eventually, but it won't help you in an emergency custody hearing. The conversation ended with Maya promising to provide updated contact information once she secured housing, and Stephanie promising to file paperwork resisting any custody modifications. Neither promise felt adequate to the threat Marcus represented. Dr. Hartwick called on day 6 with a preliminary update that made Maya's heart stop. We've completed initial microscopy on the digital images and consulted with colleagues at 3 institutions. The consensus is that your specimens show characteristics consistent with exceptionally well-preserved Cretaceous inclusions. We're ready to schedule field extraction whenever you are. How soon can you go? I've assembled a team, myself, 2 graduate students, and a preservation specialist. Jack's confirmed he can fly us in next Wednesday. We'll need 4 days on site for proper extraction and documentation. Can you join us? I'd recommend being present for the initial work. Maya calculated quickly. Flights to Alaska, time away from job searching in Seattle, childcare for Lily during the extraction. The costs were prohibitive. The alternative was letting strangers excavate her claim without oversight, trusting that partnership agreements would protect her interests. I'll be there. I'll bring Lily again. She needs to see this through. Excellent. I'm sending you a detailed extraction plan and partnership agreement revision based on preliminary findings. Your legal counsel should review everything before you sign. We're being very conservative in our valuation language. But Maya, I want you to understand something. If extraction confirms what we expect, you're looking at specimens worth substantial 6 figures minimum, possibly 7 figures depending on DNA viability. The numbers didn't feel real. 6 figures meant hundreds of thousands. 7 figures meant millions. The gap between Maya's current reality, $187 in her account after paying final rent, and the possibility of millions was too vast to conceptualize. Dr. Hartwick, I need to ask directly, what are the odds this is actually valuable versus the odds I'm chasing false hope? Based on what I've seen, 70% chance of significant value, maybe higher. The photographs show quality and diversity I rarely encounter. But Maya, I could be wrong. Authentication might reveal degradation invisible in photos. DNA extraction might fail. Market interest might be lower than expected. I'm optimistic, but I'm not certain. 70% odds were better than Maya had faced in months. Better than her chances of making Seattle rent. Better than her odds of keeping her job. Better than the probability of Marcus accepting her as an equal partner instead of a liability to be managed. She hung up and immediately called the attorney Dr. Hartwick had recommended, Maya Chen, no relation, who specialized in mining law and research partnerships. The consultation fee was $400, money Maya didn't have, but Laura agreed to defer payment pending claim development. The legal review took 2 days, Laura calling with detailed questions about extraction timelines, ownership structure, and revenue splits. Ms. Chen, Dr. Hartwick's proposal is remarkably favorable to you. Most institutional partnerships would demand majority ownership or controlling interest. She's offering expertise and resources in exchange for research rights and reasonable cost recovery. If the specimens are valuable, you retain 80% of proceeds after extraction costs. That's generous. So I should sign? I'm recommending minor modifications around timeline guarantees and cost caps. But yes, fundamentally this protects your interests while giving you access to expertise you need. Sign it. Maya signed a partnership agreement on day 9, electronic signature binding her to collaboration with the University of Alaska Fairbanks Geophysical Institute. The document felt like commitment and surrender simultaneously, acknowledging she couldn't develop the claim alone while maintaining ownership of what might be found. The second trip to Alaska departed on Tuesday, Maya and Lily flying north again with 2 suitcases containing everything they owned that mattered. The Seattle apartment sat empty behind them. Keys returned to management. Forwarding address listed as general delivery, Fairbanks, Alaska, because Maya had nowhere else to claim. Jack met them at the airport with his usual gruff efficiency and a piece of news that made Maya's stomach clench. 3 different extraction companies have contacted me in the last week, offering to buy your claim site unseen. The offers range from $50,000 to $200,000. That's interesting because no one offers money for worthless property. What did you tell them? I told them you're working with the university and aren't entertaining offers. But Maya, those companies have resources to investigate claims independently. If they're offering 6 figures without seeing the site, they've done research suggesting substantially higher value. You might be sitting on something bigger than we thought. The field team assembled Wednesday morning. Dr. Hartwick and her 2 graduate students, Raj and Christina, both looking impossibly young and eager. Dr. Stephen Kwan, preservation specialist from UC Berkeley who'd flown in specifically for this extraction, Jack piloting, and Maya and Lily as observers and property owners. The flight to Coldfoot took 2 trips, Jack Cessna carrying people first, then equipment, specimen containers, portable lab equipment, documentation cameras, safety gear. The operation felt professional in ways that made Maya nervous. These people expected to find something significant. If they were wrong, the disappointment would be institutional and public. They established base camp at the same riverbank as before, tents arranged in a precise grid, equipment organized under tarps. The whole operation radiating competence that contrasted sharply with Maya's previous desperate investigation. The hike to the mine took an hour, the team moving slowly under equipment weight. Dr. Hartwick examined the mine entrance with visible excitement, pointing out features to her. Students, explaining geological context that meant nothing to Maya but clearly mattered to experts. The Cretaceous amber deposits in Alaska are understudied compared to Baltic or Dominican sites. If this claim produces viable specimens, it could reshape understanding of North American paleoecology during the late Cretaceous. We're talking about ecosystems that existed just before the KT extinction event, the asteroid impact that killed the dinosaurs. Data from this period is precious. They entered the mine cautiously, Dr. Hartwick's team having reviewed Jack's safety assessment and added their own precautions, additional shoring at the collapse, communication equipment, environmental monitoring. The operation proceeded with methodical precision that made Maya's solo crawl through the gap seem recklessly stupid in retrospect. Dr. Kwan, the preservation specialist, went through the gap first, carrying portable lighting and documentation equipment. His voice echoed back through communication radios. Chamber confirmed. Amber deposits extensive. Beginning preliminary documentation. The wait felt eternal. Lily sat beside Maya at the tunnel entrance, both of them listening to technical jargon, crackling over radios as the team photographed, measured, and cataloged what they found. Christina, one of the grad students, tried to translate. They're confirming the amber seams are in situ, meaning they haven't been disturbed since formation. That's important for scientific context. And Dr. Kwan is identifying inclusion types for extraction priority. After 2 hours, Dr. Hartwick's voice came through with barely contained excitement. Maya, you need to see this. We're sending Raj back through to help you navigate the gap safely. What you found is extraordinary. The crawl through the collapse gap felt less terrifying the second time. Maya's body remembering the movements, her mind focused on destination rather than danger. She emerged into the chamber illuminated now by professional lighting that revealed details her headlamp had missed. The amber glowed with internal fire, golden and orange and deep red, every surface reflecting light in ways that made the chamber seem alive. Dr. Hartwick and Dr. Kwan worked systematically, photographing specimens, taking samples, conducting preliminary analysis with portable microscopes. Maya, look at this. Dr. Hartwick directed her attention to a wall section where a particularly large amber deposit held what appeared to be a complete small lizard, perhaps 3 inches long, frozen in translucent gold with every scale visible. This is Cretaceous period, probably 75 million years old, preservation quality I've rarely seen. If we can extract viable DNA from tissue this well preserved, we'd have genetic data from an era we barely understand. She moved to another section, pointing out inclusions that Maya's untrained eye couldn't fully appreciate. Insects in mating positions, plant material showing cellular structure, a spider with prey caught in its web, frozen forever in the moment of predation. Each of these specimens tells a story about ancient ecosystems. The diversity you're seeing suggests this area was near a tropical forest, rich in species, right before the mass extinction. It's a snapshot of a world that was about to end. Dr. Kwan added his assessment from a scientific perspective that made the monetary implications clear. Ms. Chen, I've worked with amber collections at major museums and research institutions globally. What you have here rivals the best specimens from Myanmar and Baltic sources. If even 10% of these inclusions yield extractable DNA, you're looking at specimens worth $50,000 to $500,000 each to research institutions and serious collectors. The numbers didn't process. Maya's brain couldn't connect $50,000 to $500,000 each with the financial reality she'd been living. Negative $300 months, eviction threats, selling belongings to eat. The gap was too vast. How many specimens are we talking about? Dr. Hartwick considered the question carefully. Conservative estimate? Several hundred viable specimens in this chamber alone. If the seam continues beyond what we can see, potentially thousands. But we're being very selective about what we extract. Scientific value requires careful documentation and preservation. We can't just hack amber out and expect it to retain worth. The extraction work continued for 3 days, the team working in careful shifts to minimize chamber time while maximizing documentation. They removed 23 specimens, each cataloged with GPS coordinates, photographic documentation, geological context, and preliminary identification. Maya watched the process with growing understanding that this wasn't treasure hunting, but scientific archaeology, each specimen treated as irreplaceable data about a vanished world. The care they took justified their expertise, validated Dr. Hartwick's insistence on proper partnerships. On the final day, Dr. Kwan conducted preliminary DNA testing using portable equipment that could detect genetic material presence without full sequencing. The results came back on 16 of the 23 specimens, positive for ancient DNA signatures, quality levels suggesting successful extraction would be possible. Dr. Hartwick's announcement to the team carried controlled excitement. 16 specimens with confirmed DNA presence, quality parameters within viable ranges, diversity suggesting multiple species and taxonomic groups. This is significant. This is publication-worthy. This is exactly what we hope to find. She turned to Maya with an expression that mixed professional satisfaction with human empathy. Ms. Chen, Maya, I need to make some calls to institutional partners. Based on what we've extracted and confirmed, I'm confident we can secure that bridge loan I mentioned. Probably $100,000 against future proceeds, available within 2 weeks. Would that help your immediate situation? Maya tried to speak, found her throat closed, managed a nod. $100,000 would solve every crisis Marcus had created through the divorce. It would fund stable housing, Lily's music education, breathing room to plan futures that didn't involve constant emergency. That night, sitting beside the river while the team celebrated with whiskey Jack had packed, Maya allowed herself to fully feel what had happened. She'd inherited a worthless mine, spent money she couldn't afford investigating it, crawled through a collapse that could have killed her, and found treasure that scientists were confirming was real. The vindication felt almost painful in its intensity. Everyone who'd mocked her, everyone who'd called the Alaska trip desperate foolishness, everyone who'd assumed she was following family tradition of failure toward inevitable disappointment had been wrong. Lily found her sitting alone, crawled in her lap despite being too big for it, and spoke with the devastating honesty of children. Mom, you're crying. Are you sad? No, baby. I'm the opposite of sad. I'm relieved and scared and happy and overwhelmed. But not sad. Did we find enough treasure? Yes, sweetheart. I think we found enough treasure. The flight back to Fairbanks carried 23 amber specimens in specialized containers, geological samples for additional testing, and documentation that would become scientific papers and research grants. Dr. Hartwick spent the flight explaining next steps: laboratory analysis, DNA extraction attempts, institutional negotiations, and public announcement coordinated with the university. Maya, once we announce findings, you're going to receive attention. Media will want your story. Collectors will make offers. Extraction companies will increase their bids. You need to be prepared for that pressure. What should I do? Refer everything to your attorney. Don't negotiate directly. Don't sign anything without legal review. And don't let anyone convince you that quick money is better than strategic development. You're not desperate anymore. You can afford to be patient. The words settled over Maya with strange weight. She wasn't desperate anymore. The woman who'd flown to Alaska 2 weeks ago with $553 and no prospect had found something that made desperation obsolete. She still had challenges, still faced custody threats from Marcus and housing instability and a daughter depending on her. But she had resources now, or would soon, and resources changed everything. They landed in Fairbanks as evening painted the sky in impossible colors. Dr. Hartwick's lab team took possession of the specimens, beginning analysis work that would continue for weeks. Maya and Lily checked back into the familiar hotel, this time with the understanding that Alaska was becoming home rather than temporary escape. The bridge loan approval came through on day 14, Dr. Hartwick calling with barely contained satisfaction. Maya, the consortium reviewed preliminary findings and approved $100,000 against future proceeds. The terms are favorable: 5% interest, repayment from first sale proceeds, no personal liability beyond claim value. The money will transfer to your account within 48 hours. Maya sat down, her legs suddenly unable to support her weight. $100,000 in 2 days. That's correct. And Maya, this is conservative. Based on what we've confirmed so far, the specimens we extracted are worth minimum $500,000 retail. The full chamber could be worth 10 times that. The bridge loan is basically risk-free for the lenders. The money arrived on a Wednesday, appearing in Maya's bank account like a mathematical error. $100,000 where there had been $127.43. She stared at the number for 5 minutes, refreshing the app repeatedly to confirm it was real. Then she called Maya Chen, her mining attorney, and spoke words that felt like victory. I need to establish an LLC for claim management. I need to open custody proceedings, modification resistance. And I need to find stable housing in Fairbanks. In that order. Congratulations, Maya. You just became my favorite kind of client, one who can pay their bills and isn't drowning anymore. The custody threat from Marcus evaporated when Maya's attorney provided documentation of her financial situation and stable housing in Fairbanks. Marcus's attorney sent a terse message. Mr. Chen withdraws modification request. Child support will continue as established. Translation: Marcus had been bluffing, using custody threat to maintain control and dominance. When Maya demonstrated she wasn't desperate and vulnerable anymore, the threat became pointless. The apartment Maya rented was nothing special: 2 bedrooms in a quiet neighborhood, mountain views, proximity to decent schools. But it felt like palace after Seattle's cramped poverty. Lily's room held her violin and music books, space to practice without neighbors complaining. The kitchen was clean and functional. The windows looked out on wilderness instead of parking lots. They moved in on day 23 with belongings retrieved from Seattle storage and furniture purchased without checking price tags first. Each purchase felt surreal: a couch, a dining table, beds that weren't secondhand. Maya kept expecting someone to revoke the money, to reveal it had been a mistake or a dream. But the account balance remained real. The specimens remained valuable. And Dr. Hartwick's updates continued to confirm that preliminary findings were holding. DNA extraction succeeding, institutional interest high, market value exceeding initial estimates. The full authentication results arrived on day 37, Dr. Hartwick presenting them in her office with the formality of significant announcements. Maya, I'm pleased to report that laboratory analysis confirms exceptional preservation across all extracted specimens. We've successfully sequenced partial genomes from 12 specimens representing 8 different species. This is unprecedented for North American Cretaceous amber. She pulled up images on her screen showing genetic data, phylogenetic trees, species identifications that meant nothing to Maya but clearly mattered enormously to science. 3 specimens in particular are generating significant interest. Specimen 7, the lizard you saw in the chamber, we've extracted nearly complete DNA from preserved soft tissue. Specimen 11, an insect we've identified as early Hymenoptera, provides data about wasp evolution that will rewrite textbooks. And specimen 19, plant material showing angiosperm characteristics, gives us flowering plant genetic information from 75 million years ago. What does that mean financially? The Smithsonian has already made a preliminary offer for the complete collection we extracted, $2.3 million. The Field Museum in Chicago offered $2.1 million. And a private collector whose name I can't disclose offered $3.5 million for exclusive rights. The numbers hit Maya like physical impact. Millions. Multiple millions. For 23 specimens extracted from a chamber containing hundreds more. What do you recommend? Don't sell yet. Let me coordinate additional extractions, expand the collection, build comprehensive scientific documentation that increases value. Based on what we know now, the complete chamber could yield specimens worth $20 to $50 million over strategic extraction timeline. Selling now would be leaving enormous value unrealized. Maya's hands shook holding the documentation Dr. Hartwick provided. $20 to $50 million. The number was absurd, impossible, more money than she could conceptualize. It was also real, backed by institutional offers and scientific confirmation and expert assessment. How long would strategic extraction take? 2 to 3 years for complete development. But we can sell specimens incrementally, generating revenue while preserving maximum value. You'd see significant funds within 6 months, substantial wealth within 2 years. 2 years. Maya could wait 2 years. She had housing, stability, resources to support Lily properly. The bridge loan had bought time that desperation had stolen. Now she could afford patience. That evening, sitting in her Fairbanks apartment with Lily practicing violin in the next room, Maya pulled up Marcus's social media for the first time in weeks. He'd posted about Chen and Hastings Biotech's latest funding round, $25 million, expansion plans, partnerships with pharmaceutical giants. The photos showed him and Jennifer at another celebration, champagne glasses raised, success radiating from every carefully staged image. The captions talked about innovation, perseverance, the rewards of calculated risk-taking. Maya felt nothing looking at them. No jealousy, no anger, no residual pain from betrayal. Marcus had his biotech empire worth $40 million. She had an amber mine worth potentially more. They'd both built fortunes, just through different methods and timelines. She closed the app and opened her email, finding a message from Dr. Hartwick with subject line, "Media interest, preparation needed." The message explained that scientific journals wanted to publish findings, that National Geographic had contacted about a feature story, that the discovery was generating attention beyond academic circles. Maya would need to decide how public she wanted to be, how much attention she could handle, how to protect Lily from scrutiny while sharing the story of what they'd found. But those were problems of success rather than survival. Problems Maya could afford to have. Lily emerged from her bedroom, violin case in hand, face bright with excitement. "Mom, Mrs. Petrov, my new teacher, she says I should audition for the Alaska Youth Symphony. She thinks I'm good enough. Can I?" "Yes, baby. You can audition. You could take every music opportunity that comes. You're never going to be limited by what we can't afford again." The promise felt like redemption for months of poverty and limitation. Lily's talent would get the nurturing it deserved. Her future would expand beyond constraints that desperation had imposed. That night, Maya stood at her apartment window watching northern lights paint the Fairbanks sky in shades of green and purple. Somewhere 260 miles north, the amber chamber waited in darkness, its treasures cataloged but not exhausted, its value confirmed but not fully realized. She'd inherited a worthless mine for $1. She'd been mocked, dismissed, told she was chasing fairy tales instead of facing reality. She'd spent her emergency fund on desperate gamble that every rational person said would fail. And she'd found treasure that would change everything. The fight wasn't finished. Strategic extraction would take years. Media attention would bring complications. And somewhere, Marcus would eventually learn that his ex-wife's worthless inheritance was worth more than his biotech empire. But tonight, listening to northern lights whisper across the sky and her daughter practice violin with focus undimmed by poverty's constraints, Maya Chen allowed herself to feel what she'd been denying for months. Victory. Complete, unambiguous, undeniable victory. The amber had waited 75 million years. It could wait a little longer while she savored this moment. The article appeared in Science magazine 3 months after authentication, titled Exceptional Cretaceous Amber Deposit Yields Unprecedented Genetic Data from North American Paleocene Ecosystems. Dr. Hartwick was listed as lead author. Maya Chen identified as claim owner and research partner. 12 co-authors from institutions across 3 countries contributing analysis and expertise. The paper's publication triggered cascade effects Maya hadn't fully anticipated. Within 24 hours, her phone received calls from journalists at National Geographic, Smithsonian Magazine, the New York Times Science section, and a dozen regional outlets wanting the human interest angle. Single mother finds fortune in inherited mine. Desperation leads to discovery. Vindication of unlikely hope. Maya's attorney Laura Chun fielded most media requests, negotiating terms that protected Lily's privacy while allowing controlled storytelling. They selected 3 outlets for in-depth features: National Geographic for scientific credibility, Alaska Magazine for regional context, and, somewhat ironically, Forbes for the business development angle. The Forbes interview happened in Maya's Fairbanks apartment. The journalist, a woman named Patricia Alvarez, who'd built her career covering unconventional wealth creation. She arrived with photographer and questions that cut directly to what readers wanted to know. Ms. Chun, our research shows you inherited this claim valued at $1 less than 6 months ago. Current estimates place the deposit's worth between $20 and $50 million. That's extraordinary return on investment. What made you investigate when everyone told you it was worthless? Maya had prepared for this question, working with Laura to craft responses that were honest without being exploitative of her pain. I had nothing left to lose. The divorce had taken everything I'd built. I was facing eviction, had lost my job, and was watching my daughter's potential get constrained by poverty I couldn't escape. The mine was worthless according to every expert, but investigating it gave me purpose beyond survival. Sometimes desperation is the only luxury people in my situation can afford. Patricia's follow-up was inevitable. Your ex-husband Marcus Chun built Chun and Hastings Biotech into a $40 million company using capital you provided. You received nothing in the divorce due to prenuptial agreements. Now your amber claim is potentially worth more than his company. Is there satisfaction in that reversal? The question invited bitterness Maya no longer felt. Marcus and I built something valuable together. Then he chose to continue without me. That hurt tremendously. But his success and my success aren't in competition. I'm not trying to prove anything to him. I'm trying to build stability for my daughter and contribute something meaningful through this discovery. The scientific value of these specimens matters more than any personal vindication. The answer was diplomatic and mostly true. Maya had stopped checking Marcus's social media, had stopped measuring her worth against his achievements, had stopped letting their shared history define her forward trajectory. But she'd be lying to claim no satisfaction in knowing her worthless inheritance surpassed his biotech empire in value. The National Geographic feature took a different approach, sending writer and photographer to Alaska for week-long documentation. They flew to the mine site with Dr. Hartwick's team during another extraction phase, photographing the amber chamber in situ, capturing the painstaking work of specimen removal and preservation. The resulting photo essay was stunning. Maya in safety gear examining amber seams, Lily watching scientists work with focused attention. The chamber itself glowing golden in professional lighting, close-ups of specimens showing details invisible to casual observation. The images transformed abstract scientific discovery into visceral human story. The article's opening lines captured what Maya had been trying to articulate. In an age when generational wealth seems the only path to stability, Maya Chen's story offers something rare, proof that sometimes desperation and determination converge with luck to create opportunities that shouldn't exist but do. Her inheritance wasn't privilege. It was last chance, and she was brave enough or desperate enough to take it. The Alaska Magazine piece focused on local angle, interviewing Fairbanks residents who remembered Thomas Reeves and his failed amber operation, finding people who'd watched Evelyn live with regret that her husband's dream had bankrupted them. The narrative arc they constructed was redemptive. 3 generations, failure to abandonment to unexpected success, vindication delayed but delivered. One interview particularly struck Maya, with a woman named Dorothy Keene who'd been Evelyn's friend. Evelyn used to say the mine killed Thomas, that he'd died believing he'd wasted their lives chasing worthless rock. She kept the claim because selling it felt like admitting he'd been completely wrong. If she'd known what was there, known that Thomas had been right about the deposit's significance, I think it would have changed how she remembered those years. Maya gave her grandmother something precious, even if Evelyn never knew it. Proof that Thomas hadn't been a fool. The media attention triggered exactly what Dr. Hartwick had warned about. Increased offers, aggressive negotiations, pressure to sell quickly rather than develop strategically. Extraction companies that had offered $50,000 to $200,000 sight unseen now bid $5 to $8 million for immediate purchase of the entire claim. Private collectors offered $10 million for exclusive access. A consortium of research institutions proposed $15 million for the complete deposit, with Maya retaining 20% of any future discoveries. Laura Chen's advice was consistent. You don't need to sell. The bridge loan gave you stability. Dr. Hartwick's partnership gives you expertise. Strategic development over 2 to 3 years will maximize value exponentially. These offers are substantial, but they're trying to buy future value at present discount. Be patient. The patience was tested when Marcus's attorney contacted Laura with unexpected message. Mr. Chen wishes to congratulate his ex-wife on her discovery and proposes a business meeting to discuss potential collaboration between Chen and Hastings Biotech and Ms. Chen's amber development. He believes their combined expertise could create synergies. Maya's first instinct was refusal. Then Laura pointed out the obvious. This is Marcus recognizing you as peer rather than liability. He's coming to you, not the reverse. That's the vindication you didn't know you needed. Take the meeting, hear what he's proposing, say no if it doesn't serve your interests. But let him sit across the table and pitch you the way you once pitched investors for his company. The meeting happened at a Fairbanks restaurant Maya chose deliberately. Modest, local, nothing like the high-end Seattle establishments where Marcus conducted business. She arrived with Laura, both dressed professionally but not ostentatiously, projecting competence without performance. Marcus arrived alone, which surprised her. No Jennifer, no attorneys, just the man she'd once loved, looking slightly uncertain in ways she'd never seen during their marriage. He ordered coffee and began with what might have been genuine humility. Maya, congratulations. What you've accomplished is remarkable. I mean that sincerely. Thank you. Your biotech company is also doing well from what I've read. It is. But I'm here because I think there's potential partnership worth exploring. The genetic data your specimens are yielding has applications in evolutionary biology research that intersects with our work in genetic analysis and biopreservation. If you're open to it, Chen and Hastings could provide extraction and sequencing support in exchange for research access to DNA samples. Laura spoke before Maya could respond. Mr. Chen, Ms. Chen already has institutional partnerships providing exactly those services. What would your company offer that's differentiated? Marcus shifted, recognizing he was being negotiated with rather than pitching to. Speed and proprietary technology. Our sequencing capabilities exceed most academic institutions. We could accelerate timeline from discovery to publication to sale. That's valuable if Maya wants to maximize returns quickly. Miss Chen doesn't need quick returns. She's patient and well-capitalized. But thank you for the offer. The dismissal was professional but definitive. Marcus's expression showed surprise, frustration, and perhaps respect. He tried once more. Maya, can we speak privately for a moment? Laura began to object, but Maya raised a hand. It's fine. 5 minutes. They moved to a quiet corner while Laura watched protectively. Marcus spoke quietly, his voice carrying something that might have been regret. I handled our divorce poorly. I was cruel and dismissive, and I used legal structures to protect myself at your expense. I'm not apologizing because I think it matters to you now. I'm apologizing because it should have been said regardless. Marcus, I appreciate that. I do. But we're past the point where apologies change anything. I know. I just needed you to hear it. And Maya, I need to say this too. I was wrong about you. I treated you like you were the less capable partner, like your contributions didn't match mine. Watching you find this discovery, develop it strategically, build partnerships with major institutions, it's shown me that I was the one who didn't see clearly. You didn't need me. You never needed me. I just convinced you that you did. The words landed with unexpected weight. Maya had wanted this admission for months during the divorce, wanted Marcus to acknowledge his condescension and her capability. Now, receiving it, she felt only tired closure. Thank you for saying that. It helps a little. But Marcus, we're different people now. We want different things. Your company is impressive, and you should be proud of it. My discovery is valuable, and I'm going to develop it my way. Those paths don't need to intersect. He nodded slowly, accepting dismissal from someone he'd once dismissed. They returned to the table where Laura waited, concluded the meeting with professional pleasantries, and parted ways with finality that felt appropriate. Walking out, Laura offered assessment that made Maya smile. That was the most satisfying business meeting I've witnessed in 15 years of practice. You just turned down your ex-husband's business pitch and made him apologize for being an asshole. That's vindication. The real vindication came from unexpected sources. People who'd mocked Maya's Alaska trip, now forced to confront being spectacularly wrong. Carla from the Seattle diner sent a Facebook message. I saw the National Geographic article. Holy shit, Maya. I'm sorry for making jokes about the mine. I honestly thought you were having a breakdown. Instead, you were making the smartest decision of your life. Congratulations. Rachel, the friend who'd called the Alaska investigation crazy and exactly the kind of desperate decision that keeps people trapped in poverty, sent flowers with a note. I was wrong. You were brave. I'm sorry I didn't see it. Mrs. Patterson, the Seattle neighbor who'd made comments about chasing fairy tales, sent an email forwarded through Laura. I owe you an apology. I thought you were being irresponsible. Instead, you were being a mother doing everything possible for her daughter. I misjudged you completely. Each apology felt simultaneously validating and hollow. Maya appreciated the acknowledgments, but they didn't erase the isolation she'd felt when everyone had been certain she was failing. The vindication came too late to matter emotionally, arriving after she no longer needed it. The vindication that did matter came from Lily's violin teacher, Mrs. Petrov, who called after the Forbes article published. Miss Chen, I wanted you to know that Lily's progress has been remarkable. Her technique is advancing rapidly, but more importantly, her confidence has transformed. She plays like a child who believes in her own future. That's the real treasure you found. Not the amber, but the security that let your daughter flourish. The observation made Maya cry in ways the financial success hadn't. Money solved practical problems, but Lily's transformation was evidence that desperation had nearly broken something more valuable than stability. Her daughter's confidence, creativity, belief in her own worth had been casualties of poverty that wealth was beginning to restore. The Alaska Youth Symphony audition happened in October, Lily performing Vivaldi's concerto in a minor with focus that silenced the room. Maya watched from the audience beside Jack Petrov, who became unlikely friend and mentor through the extraction process. When Lily finished, the silence held for 3 beats before applause that sounded like recognition. She was accepted immediately, youngest violinist in the ensemble, her talent finally receiving the platform it deserved. The celebration dinner that night, sushi at Fairbanks' best restaurant, Lily glowing with achievement, felt like the moment Maya could finally exhale completely. Mom, thank you for going to Alaska, even when everyone said it was stupid. If you'd listened to them, I wouldn't be here. Baby, I didn't go to Alaska for the symphony. I went because we needed hope, and the mine was the only place hope might exist. But you found it. You found hope and treasure, and you were right when everyone else was wrong. The simplicity of her daughter's perspective cut through complexity. Maya had been right. Despite mockery, despite rational arguments against investigating, despite every indicator suggesting failure, she'd been right to look. The second extraction phase yielded 47 additional specimens. Dr. Hartwick's team working through autumn with precision that reflected growing expertise with the site. They'd established permanent infrastructure, reinforced tunnel supports, improved access through the collapse, environmental monitoring that ensured specimen preservation. The new specimens included discoveries that generated scientific excitement exceeding the first extraction. A feathered dinosaur tail fragment similar to the famous Myanmar specimen, but with superior DNA preservation. An early mammal complete enough to reconstruct substantial genetic information. And plant material showing angiosperm diversity that suggested Alaska's Cretaceous climate was more tropical than previously understood. Institutional offers escalated accordingly. The Smithsonian increased their bid to $8.5 million for the expanded collection. The Royal Ontario Museum offered $9.2 million. A private collector whose identity Dr. Hartwick finally revealed, a tech billionaire with serious paleontology credentials, offered $12 million for exclusive purchase rights to all future extractions. Maya Chen's recommendation evolved. Maya, you're at an inflection point. You can sell now for substantial wealth that would set you and Lily up for life. Or you can continue strategic development for another year, potentially doubling or tripling returns. The decision depends on whether you need money now or can afford patience. Maya didn't need money now. The bridge loan had been repaid from first specimen sales, generating $650,000 in profit that sat in accounts earning interest. Her immediate needs were met. Housing, Lily's education, stability that let her breathe. The question was whether to optimize for maximum wealth or settle for substantial wealth with less time investment. Dr. Hartwick offered perspective from scientific angle. Maya, the specimens we're extracting aren't just valuable commodities. They're contributing to human knowledge in ways that matter beyond monetary worth. Every extraction refines our understanding of ancient ecosystems, evolution, climate change across geological time. If you sell now to a private collector, that research potential gets locked behind proprietary interests. If you continue working with institutions, you're advancing science while building wealth. The appeal to larger purpose resonated with something in Maya that money alone didn't satisfy. She'd spent her 20s building a biotech company that was supposed to matter, supposed to advance human health through genetic analysis. Marcus had stripped her involvement and credit, but the impulse to contribute something meaningful remained. I want to continue strategic development. Not because I need maximum wealth, but because the work matters. Lily's taken care of. I'm stable. We can afford to do this right. The decision set timeline for 2 more extraction phases across the following year. Institutional partnerships that would place specimens in major museums and research facilities, and Maya's gradual transformation from desperate waitress to recognized figure in paleontology philanthropy. The transformation came with complications. Media attention brought scrutiny of her divorce, Marcus's treatment of her, the prenuptial agreement that had seemed so devastating 8 months earlier. Journalists framed it as cautionary tale about wealth inequality and gender dynamics in business partnerships, Marcus becoming example of successful men who exploited their partners. His company faced minor backlash, social media criticism, calls for accountability that were more performative than substantive. Maya refused to participate in his public criticism, declining interview requests that wanted her to attack him. issuing statements through Laura that focused on moving forward rather than relitigating past. Marcus and I had a complicated marriage that ended badly. I found success after that ending. He found success during it. Both things can be true without one of us being a villain. I'm focused on my daughter and my work, not on revenge. The measured response frustrated journalists who wanted drama, but it earned respect from people Maya cared about more. Dr. Hartwick, Laura Chen, Jack Petrov, the scientific community watching to see if she'd handle success with grace or bitterness. Jennifer Hastings reached out through mutual acquaintances, requesting private conversation. Maya almost declined, then curiosity won. They met at the same Fairbanks restaurant where Marcus had pitched his partnership, Maya arriving alone this time, confident enough not to need legal protection. Jennifer was younger than Maya expected, early 30s, polished in ways that spoke of comfortable upbringing and Ivy League education. She ordered wine and began with directness that was almost refreshing. I need to say something, and I'm asking you to hear it without immediate judgment. Go ahead. I didn't pursue Marcus while you were married. We became close after the separation began, not before. I know the timeline looks suspicious, but I need you to know I'm not the person who destroyed your marriage. Maya considered the claim, weighing it against evidence and bitterness. Jennifer, Marcus destroyed our marriage by treating me as disposable once I'd served my purpose. Whether you were involved before or after the legal separation doesn't materially change that. But I appreciate you wanting to clarify. Thank you. I also wanted to say that I've learned things about how Marcus treated you, how he structured the business to exclude you, how he weaponized the prenup. I've told him it was unconscionable. We fought about it extensively. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm benefiting from partnership Marcus denied you. I run Chen and Hastings Biotech as equal partner, own 40% equity, make decisions Marcus used to make unilaterally. Everything you should have had, I have. That feels wrong in ways I can't fix, but need to acknowledge. The honesty was unexpected and complicated. Maya could hate Jennifer as the woman who replaced her, or she could recognize her as someone who negotiated better terms for similar work. The latter perspective felt more true. Jennifer, I hope you maintain that equity and authority. I hope Marcus treats you as actual partner. I hope you build something remarkable with the company I helped start, not because I'm generous, but because someone should benefit from what we created. And if it can't be me, I'd rather it be a woman who demanded her worth than another man who assumed his. They parted on terms that weren't friendship, but weren't enmity either. Maya felt nothing toward Jennifer beyond mild hope that she'd succeed where Maya had been denied success. The emotional investment in Marcus's life had evaporated, replaced by focus on her own trajectory. The third extraction phase, conducted the following spring, yielded the discovery that would define the Reeves-Amber claim's scientific legacy. A near-complete skeleton of a small theropod dinosaur, possibly juvenile Truden, preserved in amber matrix alongside plant material and insects from the same microenvironment. The specimen was unprecedented, combining skeletal preservation typical of fossil beds with soft tissue preservation typical of amber inclusions. Dr. Hartwick's preliminary assessment called it potentially the most significant paleontological discovery of the decade, offering data about dinosaur biology impossible to extract from traditional fossils. The announcement triggered international attention beyond science journalism. CNN covered it. BBC sent crews to Alaska. Japanese and European outlets requested interviews. Maya found herself explaining technical details she barely understood, translating Dr. Hartwick's expertise into language non-scientists could grasp. The theropod specimen alone attracted offers exceeding all previous bids combined, $25 million from a consortium of natural history museums, $30 million from the tech billionaire collector, $35 million from an institution Maya was asked not to name pending final negotiations. Dr. Hartwick recommended the museum consortium, Maya. The monetary difference is substantial, but the scientific impact differs exponentially. Museums will make this specimen available for research, will publish findings, will contribute to human knowledge in ways private collection can't match. You're wealthy regardless of which offer you accept. The question is what kind of legacy you want this discovery to have. Maya didn't need to think long. The museums. It's not about the money anymore. It's about doing something that matters beyond my bank account. The sale finalized in summer, 16 months after Maya first crawled through the collapse gap. The museum consortium paid $25 million for the theropod specimen plus 30 additional specimens from all 3 extraction phases. After Dr. Hartwick's team received their contracted percentages, after extraction costs and legal fees, after bridge loan interest and various expenses, Maya's net proceeds, $18.7 million. $18.7 million. From a mine she'd inherited for $1. From investigation everyone called desperate foolishness. From a decision made when she had $847 and was living in her truck. The number was absurd, impossible, more wealth than Maya could conceptualize meaningfully. It was also real, sitting in accounts managed by financial advisors Laura had recommended, structured to provide stability and growth across decades. Lily's education fund received $2 million, enough for conservatory training, graduate school, career development in music, or whatever field she ultimately chose. The remainder was diversified, investments, real estate, trusts that would ensure multi-generational stability. Maya kept the Fairbanks apartment, modest despite her wealth, close to Lily's school and symphony rehearsals. She purchased a small cabin near Coldfoot as retreat and reminder within sight of the mine that had changed everything. And she established the Thomas and Evelyn Reeves Foundation for Paleontological Research, endowed with $3 million, supporting amber studies and young researchers who lacked funding. The foundation's announcement included a photograph of Maya standing at Thomas Reeves' gravestone in Fairbanks. The headstone sheet had replaced with one that read, Thomas Reeves, 1943 to 1992, amber prospector and visionary. He was right. The gesture was for Evelyn as much as Thomas. The grandmother Maya had never known who'd preserve the claim because selling felt like admitting her husband had been foolish. Now everyone knew. Thomas Reeves hadn't been a fool. He'd found something extraordinary and died before the world recognized its value. Dorothy Keene, Evelyn's elderly friend, attended the foundation launch ceremony. She approached Maya afterward with tears streaming. Evelyn would be so proud. Not of the money, though that's wonderful, but of you vindicating Thomas, of you showing that his work mattered. She carried guilt about his death for 23 years, believing she should have made him quit sooner. You've given her peace even though she's gone. The ceremony also drew unexpected attendee. Marcus, sitting in the back, leaving before Maya could speak to him. He sent an email later that night, brief and simple. I'm proud of you. I'm sorry I didn't say that when we were together. You were always more capable than I acknowledged. Congratulations on everything you've accomplished. Maya read it twice, felt mild satisfaction, then deleted it and moved on. Marcus's opinion no longer held power over her self-worth. His pride or disappointment were equally irrelevant to her trajectory. The National Medal of Science nomination came through official channels, Dr. Hartwick calling with excitement that bordered on disbelief. Maya, the National Academy of Sciences has nominated you for the National Medal of Science in the category of Biological Sciences. It's recognizing your contribution to paleontology through the amber deposit development and your support of research access. This is extraordinary. I'm not a scientist. I just own the mine. You're a scientific philanthropist who prioritized research access over maximum profit, who partnered with institutions rather than private collectors, who's advanced human knowledge substantially through strategic decisions. The Academy recognizes that contribution matters regardless of credentials. The medal ceremony happened in Washington, D.C., Maya wearing a dress that cost more than her Seattle monthly rent had been, standing beside actual scientists who'd spent lifetimes advancing their fields. The president presented medals with remarks that characterized each recipient's contribution. For Maya, Ms. Chen's discovery and generous approach to specimen distribution has provided unprecedented data about Cretaceous ecosystems, advancing evolutionary biology in ways that will influence research for generations. Lily attended the ceremony, 11 years old and serious in her formal dress. Violin case carefully stored at the hotel because she'd brought it everywhere since joining the symphony. Watching her daughter witness this recognition, Maya felt vindication more profound than any financial success. This was proof that desperate choices could lead somewhere beyond survival. That betting everything on unlikely hope could transform not just individual circumstances, but contribute meaningfully to collective human knowledge. That single mothers living in their trucks could become people presidents recognized for scientific contribution. The final vindication came quietly, without ceremony or announcement. Maya was shopping for groceries in Fairbanks, ordinary afternoon errand, when she encountered the shift supervisor from the Seattle diner, Ron, who told her he couldn't hold her position while she investigated the Alaska mine. He recognized her immediately, surprise and embarrassment crossing his face. "Maya, I didn't know you live in Alaska now. I've been here about 18 months. How are you?" "I'm fine. I'm here visiting family." "Maya, I need to say something. I saw the articles about your discovery. I'm sorry I couldn't hold your job. I honestly thought you were making a mistake investigating that mine. I thought you'd come back broke and desperate. Instead, you found something incredible. It's okay, Ron. You made a business decision that made sense given the information you had. I don't blame you. That's generous. Most people would tell me to fuck off." Maya smiled, the anger she might have felt 18 months ago simply absent. "I spent too much energy being angry at people who doubted me. It's exhausting and pointless. You weren't wrong to be skeptical. Everyone was skeptical. I got lucky in ways that don't usually happen. Lucky is one way to describe it. Brave is another. Most people in your situation would have accepted defeat. You refused." The conversation ended with awkward pleasantries, and Ron walking away shaking his head. Maya continued shopping, feeling nothing beyond mild satisfaction that someone who doubted her had been forced to acknowledge being wrong. The real satisfaction came from Lily's progress, quantifiable in ways wealth never would be. She performed her first solo with the Alaska Youth Symphony at 13, Mendelssohn's Violin Concerto in E minor, her technique and musicality drawing standing ovation from audience that included Dr. Hartwick, Jack Petrov, Laura Chun, and a dozen other people who'd become family through the Amber discovery journey. Maya watched from the front row, tears streaming openly, as her daughter demonstrated exactly why the desperate Alaska gamble had mattered. Not for the money, though financial security was transformative. Not for vindication, though proving doubters wrong carried satisfaction. But for this, Lily performing at the level her talent deserved, her potential unconstrained by poverty's limitations, her future expanding in every direction. After the performance, Lily found Maya backstage and asked the question she'd been building toward. "Mom, can I ask you something about the mine? About the decision to go investigate when everyone said it was worthless?" "Of course, baby. What do you want to know? Were you scared? When you crawled through that gap in the collapse, when you didn't know what you'd find, were you terrified?" Maya considered the question seriously. "Yes, I was terrified. Terrified the mine was worthless, and I'd wasted our emergency fund. Terrified I'd get trapped and die and leave you alone. Terrified everyone was right, that I was making desperate choices that would only make things worse. But I was more terrified of giving up without trying. Does that make sense?" "Yeah, it makes sense. Because sometimes being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you're scared, but you do it anyway, because not trying is worse than failing." "Exactly. Where did you learn that?" "From watching you." The conversation ended with Maya holding her daughter in the backstage hallway, both of them crying for different reasons, united by understanding that courage looked different than movies suggested. It wasn't fearless heroism. It was terrified desperation converted into action because alternatives were unacceptable. The Reeves Amber claim continued producing significant specimens across subsequent extractions, the full chamber yielding over 300 scientifically valuable pieces across 4 years of strategic development. Total value extracted and sold, $47.3 million, making it the most productive amber site ever discovered in North America. Dr. Hartwick published 17 papers based on specimens from the claim, her career reaching heights she'd spent decades pursuing. The graduate students who'd participated in initial extractions, Raj and Christina, built their dissertations on Reeves' claim data, both securing tenure-track positions at major research universities. Jack Petrov retired from bush flying at 72, using money Maya paid him for repeated site transportation to establish a scholarship fund for Alaska Native students pursuing aviation careers. He remained close friend, visiting Maya and Lily regularly, telling stories about prospectors he'd flown over 4 decades, none of whose discoveries matched the Reeves claim's significance. Laura Chun expanded her practice to focus exclusively on mining law and scientific partnerships, her expertise increasingly sought after as other amber deposits were discovered and required similar strategic development. She remained Maya's attorney and friend, navigating complexities that wealth introduced while keeping her grounded in practical reality. Marcus's biotech company went public 3 years after the divorce, IPO valuing Chun and Hastings at $340 million. Marcus became wealthy beyond even his ambitions, Jennifer maintaining her equity stake and co-CEO position. The company's success generated minor media coverage, most articles mentioning Marcus's ex-wife's amber discovery in ways that contextualized his wealth against hers. Maya felt nothing reading those articles. Marcus's trajectory and hers had diverged completely, their relationship reduced to civil coordination around Lily's custody schedule and major life decisions. He was good father to their daughter in ways he'd never been good husband to Maya. That was sufficient. The final piece of vindication came 5 years after initial discovery, when the Smithsonian mounted permanent exhibition, Ancient Alaska, Cretaceous Ecosystems Revealed Through Amber. The centerpiece was the theropod specimen, displayed with extensive context about Maya's discovery, Thomas Reeves' original prospecting, and a scientific journey from abandoned mine to revolutionary data. The exhibition opening was attended by dignitaries, scientists, and curious public who'd followed the story. Maya stood before the display with Lily, now 16 and preparing for conservatory auditions, reading the plaque that told their story. This specimen and hundreds of others from the Reeves Amber Claim have transformed understanding of North American Cretaceous paleoenvironments. The deposit's discovery by Maya Chen in 2024 exemplifies how dedication, courage, and scientific partnership can unlock knowledge that benefits all humanity. Lily read the plaque quietly, then asked, "Mom, do you ever think about what would have happened if you'd listened to everyone? If you'd stayed in Seattle and never gone to Alaska?" "Sometimes, but not in ways that matter. I made a choice. It worked out. That's the story. It's a good story. Yeah, baby. It's a good story." They walked through the exhibition, examining specimens Maya had last seen in darkness underground, now illuminated and contextualized, transformed from hidden treasure to shared knowledge. Each piece represented not just monetary value, but human understanding expanded, questions answered, data preserved for future researchers to build upon. The journey from desperate waitress to recognized philanthropist had taken 5 years, but it felt simultaneously longer and shorter than that. Longer because poverty's degradation had marked those pre-Alaska months with grinding weight that made time drag. Shorter because success, once achieved, compressed preceding struggle into a simplified narrative. Woman finds treasure, changes her life, contributes to science. The reality had been messier, terror and doubt, mockery endured and vindication savored, relationships destroyed and rebuilt, identity transformed from victim to agent. But the simplified narrative wasn't wrong, just incomplete. Maya Chen had inherited a worthless mind. She'd investigated despite universal skepticism. She'd found treasure that changed everything. Those facts were true, even if they couldn't capture emotional complexity of the journey. Walking out of the Smithsonian into Washington, D.C. afternoon, Lily moving beside her with confidence that came from knowing her future was secure, Maya felt something close to peace. Not because struggle had ended. Wealth introduced different challenges, different pressures, different ways to fail. But because she'd proven something that mattered more than financial success. She'd proven that ordinary people could refuse surrender even when every rational indicator suggested giving up. that single mothers living in trucks could become scientific philanthropists, that desperate gambles could succeed despite odds, that $1 could become 47 million through courage and determination and willingness to crawl through collapse gaps others wouldn't approach. The amber had waited 75 million years. Thomas Reeves had found it but died before recognition. Evelyn had preserved it without knowing its value. And Maya had extracted it, shared it, converted ancient trapped life into present human knowledge. That was legacy worth more than money. That was vindication complete. The phone rang as they waited for their car, Dr. Hartwick's name appearing on screen. Maya answered, expecting update on another specimen analysis, instead receiving news that made her smile. "Maya, I've been contacted by prospectors who've discovered what might be another significant amber deposit in interior Alaska. They're asking if you'd be interested in partnership to develop it properly. Apparently, your approach to the Reeves claim has become a model for how to balance scientific value with commercial interests. They want to replicate it. Are you interested? Only if you are. This isn't my expertise alone. It's partnership, your decision-making combined with my scientific knowledge. That combination is what made Reeves' claim succeed beyond anyone's expectations." Maya looked at Lily, who'd overheard enough to understand the question. Her daughter nodded with a smile that said, "Why not? We're good at this. Send me the details. Let's see if lightning strikes twice." The call ended with plans for a preliminary assessment, another potential journey into Alaska wilderness, another chance to find what others had overlooked. Maya wasn't naive. This new deposit might be worthless, might yield nothing beyond disappointment and wasted resources. But she'd learned something valuable through the Reeves claim experience. Sometimes the only way to find out if treasure exists is to look, even when everyone says looking is foolish. Sometimes desperate choices lead somewhere beyond survival. Sometimes $1 becomes millions through refusal to accept that desperation means defeat. And sometimes, rarely but powerfully, ordinary people do extraordinary things simply because they refuse to quit. The car arrived, driver loading luggage while Maya and Lily settled in a back seat. They were flying back to Fairbanks that evening, home to the modest apartment and small cabin, to the life they'd built from nothing when nothing was all they possessed. The Reeves amber claim sat 260 miles north, its chamber now thoroughly extracted, but its legacy permanently established. Maya Chen's name would be associated with those specimens forever, mentioned in papers and exhibitions, connected to discoveries that advanced human knowledge in ways money couldn't measure. But the real treasure, the one that mattered beyond science and wealth and vindication, was sitting beside her reading violin music for tomorrow's rehearsal. Lily, thriving and confident, her talent nurtured and her future unlimited, made possible by a mother who'd refused to accept that poverty was permanent fate. Sometimes inheritance measured in dollars and property. Sometimes it measured in courage passed from generation to generation, in refusal to surrender taught through example, in belief that impossible circumstances could transform through desperate determination. Thomas Reeves had died believing he'd failed. Evelyn had lived with that false belief for decades. Maya had proven them both wrong, had vindicated their choices and sacrifices, had converted their failure into her success. And now Lily would carry that forward, understanding that treasure wasn't just what you found in the ground, but what you built with courage when everyone said building was pointless. The plane lifted off into D.C. evening sky, carrying them west toward Alaska, toward home, toward whatever came next. Behind them, the Smithsonian exhibition would welcome thousands of visitors, each learning about ancient ecosystems and modern courage. Ahead, another potential discovery waited, another chance to prove that lightning could strike twice. But Maya wasn't thinking about future discoveries or past vindication. She was thinking about the moment she crawled through that collapse gap, terrified and determined, willing to risk everything for one chance to change trajectory. That moment had defined everything that followed. Not because it guaranteed success, it didn't, but because it represented refusal to accept defeat, willingness to try despite impossible odds, courage born from desperation and converted into action. That was the real inheritance she'd give Lily. Not $47 million, not scientific legacy, not even the satisfaction of proving doubters wrong, but the understanding that sometimes the only thing separating failure from triumph is willingness to crawl through the gap when everyone else turns back. The amber had waited. Maya had looked. And everything had changed because she'd refused to accept that worthless meant hopeless. That was the story. That was the victory. That was enough. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you love this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.